Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to call the March meeting of the Finance and Admin Committee to order. Madam Clerk, can we do a roll call, please? How do I vote? Oh, on this one. I was looking at this, for God's sakes. Thank you. Declarations of interest. Councillor Wu. Request.
Sorry, Chair, I guess you're speaking to me.
I am.
Yes, I do have a conflict of interest regarding a relative that's employed with the regional municipality of Clarington in the social services department. So I'll be declaring on item 2024 F-3.
Great, thank you. I also would like to declare an interest as I have a family member that's working in the Works Department, and I'll be declaring an interest in regards to that in the budget report. So we'll be asking for motion to divide so Councillor Wu and my conflict can be dealt with. Adoption of the minutes of February 13th, moved by Councillor Lee, seconded by Councillor McDougall. Corrections? All those in favor? Opposed? That item is carried. There's no statutory public meetings. There's no presentations. We have 5 delegations that have registered, and we have a lengthy staff report and presentation in regards to the 2024 budget. So we'll start with our delegations. Our first delegate is Mr. Jeff Gray, who's the president of Unifor Local 222. And Jeff, welcome to our chamber. Our topic is transit long-term service and financing strategy, and you have 5 minutes, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for allowing Unifor Local 222 to speak on this budget today. I'd like to begin by talking about something we can all agree on. Our region is experiencing explosive growth. The post-pandemic return of ridership continues to exceed everyone's expectations. Our incredible region is a beautiful mosaic boasting of culture, business, the arts and entertainment, and a university college campus that expands every time you drive north of that school. I represent the Durham College Student Association, and I represent the Ontario Tech Student Association. Both units have constructive discussions of enhanced transit that would ensure a better student experience. Our world-class campus demands a transit system that at the very least rivals other regions of similar size and populations. For the amount of money it costs to attend these schools, a physical, tangible, fiscal commitment must be made by our regional politicians. We cannot afford to ignore an issue that directly impacts the lives of thousands of young, vulnerable members of our community. In fact, people listening to me speak right now have a moral obligation to protect our students and help them complete their education. There needs to be a return of value for the massive costs associated with post-secondary education. Recently, one of my facilities, Del Monte, announced the closure of their Oshawa operations. This facility was on Thornton Road South, Oshawa. 71 workers, mostly migrants and women, are now looking for work. I am working with each one of these members to try and find new employment. I've had some trouble. Most of these members don't drive. These members rely on transit. This has made my job even more difficult. If you can't find employment within a close proximity to where they are, their future ability to work solely relies on transit. The sentiment relayed to me has been predictable. Transit takes too long if I have to go any type of distance. These new Canadians are being marginalized by a transit system that doesn't reflect our core values. Here in Canada, especially Durham region, nobody should be marginalized. Being inclusive is our only options, and politicians need to stand up and defend the people who need transit the most. Enhancing our transit system service is not an option. It's tangible, responsible, respectful spending of our tax dollars. I'd just like to end, and I want to paraphrase someone that is a Canadian icon, Tommy Douglas. Solidarity and unity are not measured by your commitment to yourself, your own interests, or your own workplace. But rather, solidarity and unity are measured by your commitment to those who are less fortunate, in need of responsible decision-making that affords them a fair opportunity to succeed. In solidarity. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gray. Questions of the delegate? Being none, oh, I'm sorry. You got to hit the request, Mayor Schumer.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, through you. And thank you for speaking to us today. Members of council have received many communications about transit. And no doubt you've gone through the transit budget. What area specifically of the transit budget, if you could change it, what would you change and by how much?
So, Local 222 and a lot of our workplaces are located in South End, Oshawa, you know, an industrial park there, General Motors. It's a large area, and we have literally thousands of members that work in that vicinity. And I've spoken before, the amount of Ubers that are coming down to the General Motors property, you know, which includes 5 other units within the GM property, plus Lear Oshawa, would be one area I'd like to see, obviously, improved. And then speaking with the student associations, they would like an enhanced transit service too that is more, not so much reliable, but quicker. They need to get to school and back quicker than they are right now. So it would be the north end of Oshawa and then the south end of Oshawa, which affects my membership the most.
Okay, thank you. It's just obviously, as you can understand, not only are there competing priorities within transit because it's a big region, and you're speaking to a couple of areas of it, but there's competing resources in the budget overall. So I'm just wondering, did you have an idea when, because we've received a lot of communication, you know, to increase funding, to fund transit, just in your mind or in the minds of members, how much are we short?
So, Chairperson Ian Sinnott has more the numbers that we're short to comparable regions, the investment we're getting. From what I know, the budget is allocating 2%, and it was 2.5%. And we would like to see the full 2.5% that was originally talked about allocated.
Okay, thank you.
I think it's 2%, and it's funded at 1.6%. Is that correct? So not to.
Yeah.
I'm sure Ian would have corrected the record. So.
Absolutely. He's
Thank you.
cringing behind me right now.
Yeah, he is. He
Yes.
actually.
Yeah.
He was shaking his head. So, anyway, thank you, Jeff,
Thank
for
you.
coming today. I
Thank you.
appreciate your representation and your commitment to your members and your activism. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Our next delegate is Chair Ian Sinnott from Local 222 Uniform Chair. Ian, welcome to our chamber. You have 5 minutes to correct the president's.
Morning, my name is Ian Sinnott, Unifor Chairperson for Durham Region Transit. I'm here to talk about the transit finance strategy and why it's important to keep the funding in place that Council endorsed and approved last year. Studies indicate that transit services are more relied upon by women, Indigenous people, people new to Canada, seniors, persons with disabilities, and students. The population of Durham Region is forecasted to reach 1 million residents by 2032. However, this forecast does not take into account the large population of students also living here while getting their education. The forecasted growth also includes new greenfield development in areas such as North Oshawa, Bowmanville, Brooklyn, and Seton. There is a report issued by the Toronto Board of Trade called Next Stop Building Universal Transit Access. It outlines a strategy for building a globally competitive transit system throughout the Toronto region, which includes Durham Region Transit. The report recommends a launch of region-wide 10-minute frequency throughout the Toronto region as a standard on all major routes, ensuring equitable access to jobs, education, and other opportunities. Durham Region Transit's major routing service, the 900 series routes, to date only achieve between 15 to 30-minute frequency. Durham Region Transit and key transit metrics related to the amount of transit service available to residents is ranked last compared to our nearest transit comparators. The Canadian Urban Transit Association has Durham Region's municipal contribution per capita at $80, while our nearest comparators per capita are at $131 for Mississauga, $110 for Brampton, $132 for Waterloo Region, and $99 for Hamilton. Durham Region Transit is also ranked last in revenue hours per capita at 0.86, compared to 2.0 in Mississauga and Brampton, 1.7 in Waterloo Region, and 1.6 in Hamilton. Since the pandemic, there has been a large increase in ridership numbers from commuters who live within the region and from surrounding municipalities who now rely heavily on Durham Transit as part of their daily commute to get to and from work and school. However, due to current levels of funding, Durham Transit is unable to keep up with the current increases in ridership and is leaving behind record numbers of people on our major routing systems, the 900 series, because buses are at full capacity. Current funding levels have also impacted Transit's on-time performance rating of an 80% target, which now sits at a low of 69%, and a scheduled service target of 99.5%, which is now down to 97.5%. This is a result of Transit not being able to operate service to mitigate the impacts of congestion, which lead to reduced reliability. Another area that will further impact service is the expansion of the GO station along the Lakeshore GO East extension through Durham. Council last year committed to a 2% year-over-year tax levy from the region's budget until 2032 to support the transit service and finance strategy, which would allow transit to better meet the needs of the growing demands from the public. However, the 2024 budget guideline of 7.5%, 2.5% for DRPS, and 5% for the remainder of the region has resulted in a 1.6% tax levy for Durham Region Transit. This reduction means that transit will have to reduce the planned increase to bus service for the public by over 10,000 hours, which will greatly impact Transit's ability to meet growing demands and the ability to service new greenfield development areas. The transit and finance strategy is a multi-year strategy, and any reductions this year will have to be made up in future budgets to get transit to the growth needed to service the communities within the region by 2032. Durham Transit's estimated forecast growth for ridership by 2032 is 22.9 million riders annually. However, ridership numbers already indicate that transit will exceed this forecast by upwards of 15%. And with Durham Region being one of the fastest growing areas in Canada, and as the need for affordable housing and high density housing grows, transit will need to be a viable option for people in our communities and not just an option of last resort. Durham Region has made service excellence a key priority of their core business plan, and we ask the Council continue to support the transit service and finance strategy by supporting the 2% increase, because the next 10 years of investment is critical to the success of the region and the quality of life and affordability for its residents, students, and staff. Thank you.
Thank you, Ian. Questions of the delegate? Being none, thank you. Appreciate you coming today.
Thank you.
Oh, Mayor Schumer does have a question.
All right.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, through you. And thank you again for speaking to us. And once again, we have had a lot of communication to members of council and the transit executive regarding your wishes for the funding. I'm just curious if you or your members have communicated at all with the provincial government and on these issues, because the reason I ask, and staff can correct me if I'm wrong, but there will be about $33 million in lost development charge revenue that the region and transit will have to make up for through property taxes. The province has caused some real undue hardship on transit and other aspects of regional operations, and I'm just wondering if we can count on you to go to the region, go to the Premier, and inform him of what he is trickling down to the region and by definition, transit.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely bring that forward. But I mean, again, with transit in the condition it is within the region right now, that 2% funding that was agreed to last year is definitely desperately needed. I mean, you have more and more people, like you said, that, you know, with inflation, with inflation and everything else going on, high price of gas, a lot of people are actually looking to leave their cars behind or sell their cars to use transit. But again, our transit comes across more as the last resort transit as opposed to a transit that you can rely on a daily commute. We have students who have spoke eloquently at the tech meeting who talk about having to arrive to school 2 hours early just so that they can make it to class. We also have had people who've actually literally said that they can't afford to go to their job because there isn't enough transit system. So while I understand the pressures and the needs, but as transit grows, more and more people, as the region grows, more and more people are going to depend on transit, especially when you're talking about affordable housing and high density housing. So I appreciate the constraints on the budgets, and I appreciate and I understand what the provincial government has done and how much money it is costing local governments. We can all appreciate that, but we still need to be able to take care of our most vulnerable people too. So.
Okay, thank you. I just want you to know that I can fully understand
Yeah.
the levels of frustration. In North Durham, in Brock, transit is completely on-demand service, and it struggles.
Yes.
So I can completely sympathize with what you're saying, but at the same time, we've got that delicate balancing act. But thank you very much.
I can appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next delegate is Shane Fields, Uniform National Rep, speaking as well about transit long-term service and funding strategy. Shane, welcome to our chamber, and you have 5 minutes.
Thank you very much. So I'm Shane Fields. I'm a Unifor National Representative. I represent workers all across Canada for Unifor. We are Canada's largest private sector union. We represent 315,000 workers across Canada. Some of you may know me as the former president of Unifor Local 222 in Oshawa. I want to start off with a quick story. I was a resident of Oshawa and Durham Region for 31 years. I remember my first bus ride on, I'll call it DRT, but I believe it was OTC back then. And I was 7 years old, roughly. My mom was a retail worker at the Oshawa Shopping Center. And I remember she said, "Here's a note, give it to the bus driver. When you get on, you look young, I get it." I was nervous. I was very nervous. I got on the bus. It was the 3 Park. Picked it up in front of my house on Cedar Short, South Oshawa. He read the note and he goes, "No problem, you sit right there." I think it was 85 cents maybe is what I paid as a fare, roughly. My memory's pretty good. So I get on the bus, we get there, perfect. Went out for dinner with my mom. We had a little date night. She took me to Casey's. I had a iced tea and a nacho with extra cheese. I told you my memory's pretty good. She took me to see Jurassic Park. Anyways, long story short, how many 7-year-olds today do you think could get on a bus, give a driver a note, and feel safe? Or their parents felt safe that they would get where they are? Or that they'd be safe on the bus? I don't think too many. Back then, my mom was a retail worker, and she still took transit because it was affordable, it was reliable. We had 2 vehicles, but she didn't need to drive one every day. I don't have to tell you how fast this community's growing, how fast this region's growing, how fast Oshawa's growing, and how big the numbers are going to be in Oshawa. And Durham Regional Chair John Henry, I'm sorry, but you were my mayor for many years, and I always think he was Mayor Henry, and I apologize if that comes out. But in a region that is vastly growing, and we hear about pre-pandemic ridership, we're currently at 98% over the last year of pre-pandemic ridership, and over the last 6 months, I think they said the increase was up to 110%. So the demand for transit's there. So when I look at a budget that doesn't deliver the strategy that was approved, the 10-year strategy of 2%, and we're short by about 0.4%, I have no other option but to stand here today and try to hold those accountable that made a commitment and aren't going to stand on it. I understand their struggles. I get it. I don't think your jobs are easy, and I respect you for doing them. But if you make a commitment and you can't stand firm on it, then it's just words. And that's why I'm here today. You made a commitment, and I'm asking you to stand firm on that commitment. You know, I think back to Bill Holmes started his presentation off at the Transit Executive Committee roughly 2 weeks ago with a quote from Barbara Mikulski. And it said, you don't get more for less, you get what you pay for. Give or take a word or two, but I think I'm pretty close. And I understand that. And I think if a lot of your constituents saw that, they probably wouldn't have been happy with it. But I understand it. And leading up to International Women's Day, I understand it. And I think that that was a great person to quote, and I thank you for that. But she also had a quote that said, each one of us can make a difference, and together we can make a change. And I believe in that. And that's why I'm up here today. I'm here because I want you to be accountable for the strategy that was put forward and the commitment. You know, we heard a lot from the students at the Transit Executive Committee, and they don't feel like they are getting what they pay for. Overcrowded buses, late buses, students with disabilities not being able to get on a bus or getting on a bus and it being overcrowded. You could just imagine what they're going through there. They feel like they are not a priority, and that is verbatim what one of the students said at the mic. I'm not just making that up. We need to make them a priority. And I was a little shocked when I saw Dan Carter supported the budget, knowing that he has a lot of students and obviously the university up in North Oshawa. And I commend Commissioner Anderson and Brenner on voting against this budget because they knew that it fell short. I see I'm out of time, and unless somebody's going to allow me to talk some more, which I don't think you will, but that's fine, I'll close it there.
Thank you. Thank you, Shane, for your delegation today, as well as your recall of memory about the nachos with extra cheese. So
100%.
good. Any questions of the delegate?
You threw me for a loop. I thought it was going to be Schumer.
Oh, my colleague next to me, Mayor Schumer, will probably be coming right after me. No, thank you very much, Shane and Ian and Jeff. Now, you spoke about when you were taking transit, 85 cents. What the fare gets you now and where it can take you. Obviously, a user pay.
Mm-hmm.
Where do you feel the rates for transit are? Do you think they should be more to help? Because right now, we're looking at taxpayers that are paying, property taxpayers that are paying for transit.
Mm-hmm.
I have used it, but you know, where I am in Newcastle, I have to use the car.
Right.
What's your thoughts on that? That users probably should pay more or no?
I'm going to touch on a couple things if that's okay. I appreciate the question. No, I don't think they should pay more. I don't. And it's not because I hear what you're saying and I understand the struggles that this council is up against as far as cost. I get that. But no, I don't think they should pay more because of what every Canadian is facing over the last little while. Highest rates, highest inflation, everybody's struggling. So no, I don't think that's the answer right now. And I think the fare is $3.35, is it? Is that how much it is? Like, it's a substantial amount. Now, you know, with the one fare coming in, I understand you can get a lot further now than you could before, and that's excellent. But to answer that question, no. But you raise another good point that I wanted to touch on, and it's that, you know, you live in Newcastle, you said, right? You have to take a car. Well, a lot of our transit system allows you to get into communities and allows you to get out of communities, but the service isn't there to move around the communities. I knew when I was younger that the 3 Park was going to be every half hour. And I knew on peak times it was coming every 15 minutes. And the 1 Simcoe was the same, every 15 minutes. That's the type of transit system that your residents need. Continuous, reliable. And if you ask me where funding needs to go, it needs to go into that. I proved another good point. We had 2 vehicles, and we didn't need to drive them because the transit system fulfilled that. And with an ever-growing community and region, you're going to want less cars on the road because people, and it happens right now, people are leaving 2 hours early to get to school. They're leaving 2 hours early to get to work so they can be on work on time. It's a fact. We need better funding for a reliable, affordable transit service, and one that gets you around every community in Durham region and not just in and out of communities.
No, and I agree what you mentioned about the times of Oshawa Transit and compact communities. Now it's Durham Region Transit. It's quite a big region. Now, I'll go back to Newcastle. We do have on-demand, so
Right.
we do get the service there. And we do have bus service now coming back in. Not as frequent as, the residents would like, but at least it's there. Now, your thought, because again, Oshawa, the greater city of Oshawa, as Mayor Carter would say, that's compact as long as you live within the area. But if you're coming in from Newcastle to Durham College, it's a different story.
Absolutely. And I'll be real honest with you, the on-demand service is a bit of a touchy point for me. I know Bill Holmes knows that was, when I was president a few short years ago, that was a very big topic, and I think Durham Region Chair John Henry had to be a mediator in a lot of those conversations. So I'd really rather not talk about on-demand because it's still a friction point for me. We've moved past that, and I'd like to keep it there. See, it's bubbling up. You got me going, and I'm trying to tame it down. I'd rather leave that there before I get fired up because I think we've done a good job here today.
Okay, well, I'll leave it at that. I don't want to get you fired up. Thank you, Shane.
No
Thank
problem.
you, Councillor. Councillor McDougall.
Thank you for making your delegation today. I have a question with regards to a lot of what you and the others are speaking of is with regards to capacity. We at the region have made a large commitment to electrify the fleet, and there's a significant cost to that.
Yep.
My curiosity is from your point of view, will the electrification of the fleet assist in this, or do you just need more buses?
I think if you're asking me today, right now, right here, I think more buses. Is electric the way of the future? That's
Sure.
what we're led to believe. But if you're asking me today, right now, whatever you have available to you that'll get the job done, I would say that's what you need. And I want to make one other, if this is my last opportunity to talk, I want to touch on one more thing. At the Transit Executive Committee meeting, sorry if I'm going off topic, but this is important to me. I heard the Durham Region Chair, John Henry, when he was talking, and he said it breaks his heart to deliver a budget like this because he knows it goes against everything that you're supposed to be doing. And my message to everyone here today is that the time's not up. The time wasn't up 2 weeks ago. The time's not up today. And if it truly breaks your heart, go back to the drawing board. That's my ask today, is please go back to the drawing board, find that 0.4%, and please deliver on the 10-year transit strategy that you committed to. And I'm sorry if I got off topic there.
Thank you.
That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Shane, for your delegation and your advocacy. Appreciate your attendance today.
Thank you very much.
And obviously your passion attached to the issue. Our next delegate is Colin Thompson from Para Marine Search. I know you have a guest with you today as well, Colin. I'll let you introduce him. And your topic is the annual report and strategic plan for Para. And you have 5 minutes.
Thank you. Yeah, my name is Colin Thompson. I'm the unit leader for Para Marine Search and Rescue. Today, Clint Scott, our community development officer, is going to be presenting.
Good morning, Chair. Good morning, region councillors and members of staff. Thank you for this opportunity. Everybody's had a chance to look at the presentation that we submitted a little while back, so I'm not going to draw your attention to that or waste time going through that. Our ask today is a little bit different. We've identified through a project that we undertook this past winter to refit and repower our vessel that cost us about $300,000 and took all of our savings to do that. We now are starting again with a funding request for a new vessel for a couple of years down the road. So wanted to sort of highlight our taskings or our missions that we've been involved with over the past couple of years since COVID days has quadrupled. We're back to numbers from the 80s. Our availability was what drove us to do the refit on the vessel with the new engines for $300,000 and use up our savings. So while we continue to value the support from the region and the municipalities in which we support for our operating budget, we're looking to the region and the municipalities to fund possibly 1 or 2 full-time employees or consultants that can help us drive a strategy on how we can go and raise $2 million for a new vessel, so that we're not here with our hands out to the region every year or to the municipalities every year asking for money. So this would be a short-term ask over the next couple of years to help us bring some expertise in the fundraising world in support of our mission. So I'll keep the presentation real short today, and if there's any questions.
There is questions. I'll have one, and then Councillor Lee, and then Mayor Roy. How much are these consultants going to cost to put your plan together?
Sure. Original estimates are we're looking at about $100,000 to $150,000 a year to get them going.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Lee.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, and thank you for the presentation. What is the current breakdown? Currently, you receive funding from all the lower tier municipalities, the lakeside lower tier municipalities, I presume, right? Correct?
So our funding is different from the municipalities, Pickering, Ajax, and Whitby. We apply for grants. This funding is, these grants are for capital expenses, so equipment that we require.
One time,
But we
right.
can't use it for anything else. We do receive funding from the region, operating expenses, which covers off fuel maintenance costs of the vessel to keep the vessel in service.
And how many full-time administrative staff, so non-patrols, do you
Currently, we have 0 full-time employees. All of us are volunteers, all 50 members are volunteers.
So these consultants, would they be full-time, or they in a sense be like until the funding strategy is created?
We're still working through that. We're looking at possibly bringing on a consultant and even a full-time employee that can help grant writing, searching for grants, those kinds of things, and then build a strategy that could potentially even self-fund that individual or those consultants down the road.
Are there similar organizations like PARA throughout Lake Ontario or the other lakes?
So we have sister organizations as part of the Coast Guard Auxiliary. There's a unit to our west, Toronto Search and Rescue. We have COMRA out of Oshawa, and there's other
Do
organizations.
they have similar consultant roles?
No.
So this kind of be first of its kind?
Yes.
Based on a kind of a long-term funding model for your organization?
Yep.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much for the answers.
Thank you. Anyone else from committee? Being none, Mayor Roy.
Thank you very much, and thank you, gentlemen. I would encourage each and every member of Regional Council, if the opportunity presents, to go for a ride-along, just to see exactly the work that the group does out on our waters. And I know that, I'm getting to the question, that the work is volunteer work, but I also know that the individuals that you have saved over the time have been supportive, not only to our fire departments, but also to our police as well too, and that working relationship and that you get called upon. I had the opportunity last Friday to have a conversation with Mayor Ash, and I know that you have made application not also to my Mayor's Development Community Fund. I think that, and we kind of had a preamble before, what would be your willingness to actually have for those mayors along the waterfront to come together to help and to look at potentially a strategy plan to help to do a capital fundraising for you?
We're excited by the opportunity to sit down with all of the mayors. We have had conversations at the federal level, at the provincial level, and we'll happily have conversations at the municipal level and even at the corporate level. So
Yeah.
we're not opposed to having conversations to help us drive this strategy.
Yeah, because you wouldn't be the only non-for-profit that we have come collectively together to give support and have been able to bring the resources together for you.
Thank you. Any further questions? Being done, thank you, gentlemen, for coming today. Thank you for your continued work. I know you're all volunteers and you put a tremendous amount of time together and make our shores safer. So thank you for what you're doing. And certainly there'll be further conversations among the mayors and with staff in regards to your requests. So appreciate you being here today.
Thank you.
No, it isn't. I do have one additional delegation, but I don't see him here, and that's Tyler Smale. He's not online, right? Okay. So we're going to move forward with the agenda in the absence of the delegate. So there's no items. We're moving to, there's nothing in administration and finance. We have correspondence on page 12 regarding communications engagement senior government funding. Chair Henry, did you want to speak to this?
I would ask that Allison Burgess, the Director of Corporate Communications, can give comments on this, and then I'd be happy to speak afterwards.
Okay.
Thank you. Through you, Chair. So at the February 2024 F&A committee, staff were directed to pull together a memo to look at the funding that's received from upper levels of government to the City of Toronto and determine if the Durham region receives our fair share. The memo that's in front of you today summarizes what's the information that's publicly available regarding dollars given to the City of Toronto through the New Deal, through the provincial government, and also through federal funding. And then also compares with what Durham's received. The scale is different. What we had realized from the creation of this memo is that there is a lack of infrastructure funding that's available to the region of Durham. And so we have drafted a motion for this committee's consideration to consider sending to upper levels of government regarding the lack of infrastructure funding related to regional governments in Ontario. I'm happy to answer questions if there are any.
Great. There is a recommendation and a motion. Chair Henry, do you want to move it?
If you would accept the motion at this time, yes, please.
Yeah. Moved by Chair Henry, second by Councillor Lee. In regards to senior government funding, there is a motion and a recommendation debate. Chair Henry?
The motion is really self-explanatory. You know, we contribute to the federal government's coffers, like all municipalities in this country. And I think it's only fair that we're funded on an equal basis to the community to the west of us.
Thank you. Further debate? Councillor Wu, I need you to request. There you go. Oh, do it again, please.
Yeah, to the chair, or through the chair to Allison or whoever. I support the motion wholeheartedly. What we're getting, or I should say other municipalities, the City of Toronto in itself seems to be, and I don't know if it's for political reasons, because there's votes to be got, or I say got, not bought.
You might
But
not
you're-
be wrong.
But in the motion, should we CC it to anybody in particular? To the federal government, provincial government, who? But I support the motion.
I'd be happy to accept that as a friendly and copy it to the Prime Minister, Premier, MPPs, MPs, and to AMO and FCM as well.
Well, that'll be a friendly amendment then. Thank you. Councillor Lee.
Thank you, Chair. So I think ultimately, just on the very concept of higher tier government, I think Mayor Roy just recently had a news opinion, I forgot what they're called, so editorial, on the importance of, showing up as a united front, the importance of upper tier governments and how we think this model works. I think the provincial government has kind of gone back and forth whether they want provincial or two-tier governments or not, but I think if they are ultimately going to decide that two-tier works for certain areas, that they should provide funding models and funding opportunities equal to the lower tier, because we are Durham Region, we are proud to be Durham Region, and we need to ensure Durham Region is well funded. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Any further debate? Being none, I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? That item is carried. Next report is a report in regards to expenses and remuneration for members of council and regional appointees. A motion to approve the report would be in order. Councillor McDougall, second by Councillor Gerard. Any questions? Being none, I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? That item is carried. Next item is a logistics vehicle to support community programming. There is a report. You move it and a recommendation. Moved by Chair Henry, second by Councillor Lee. Questions? Debate? Being none, all those in favor? Opposed? That item is carried. Okay, the next one is a presentation from I was going to count how many ladies, 3, I guess, the trio, 4, in regards to the business plan and budget review. It's a fairly lengthy report, and what we're going to do, councillors, is let them have their presentation, and then I'll let them come back to their chairs to answer any questions if that works from a comfort point of view. So, over to you, Elaine.
Great, thank you. Through you, Mayor Ash, good morning to committee members, Chair Henry, and all members of the Finance and Admin Committee. I would like to start off by thanking the department heads and their staff for their dedication in putting this budget together. As we know, it has been a bit of a prolonged process, and it's been an incredible amount of work, so I do thank them sincerely for their efforts to ensure that we can maintain services as best we can in these tricky financial times. And as you know, these are difficult times for our residents, and we have been challenged to both provide a budget that meets Council's December 2023 direction and also reflects the significant demand on our essential services that are driving the pressures on the budget. Over the next slides in the presentation, we will focus on specifics of the draft budget and summarize major priorities. As noted in the in their report, Council has requested a budget at a cap of 7.5%. This budget meets that approved guideline. This presentation combines an update on the budget for the CIO's office, the Corporate Services Department, summarizes tax policy from Report 2024 F2 before you today, and then walks you through the details of the proposed 2024 budget, Report 2024 F-3. Before I go on to the next slide, I would also be remiss if I didn't thank Nancy, Nicole, and their team for the incredible work that they've done in keeping us on track as we develop this budget. Great. Given the scope of activities in so many areas in 2023, I wanted to spend a little bit of time. I'm sorry, I'm just making sure I've got the right slide. There we go. I wanted to spend a little bit of time on the accomplishments of my team in the city CIO's department for 2023 and 2024. On climate change, we supported residents completing more than 50 deep energy retrofits and 750 energy coaching calls through the Durham Green Home program. We have planted 328 trees through the Leaf Backyard Tree Planting program. From the strategic initiatives perspective, we launched the community dashboard and completed the 24 applied research collaborations through City Studio Durham. And the community dashboard, as a reminder, tracks the outcomes from our strategic plan. With the DEI group, we completed an equity audit, which was reported to Council late last year, and worked with community partners to provide support to over 400 asylum seekers and refugees in Durham Region. We engaged with over 500 community members in person and online to understand how residents define a welcoming, prosperous, and healthy community, and this is critical as we embark on developing our next strategic plan. On innovation, we were named one of the top 7 global intelligent communities for a 3rd year in a row and hosted 2 business showcase events. From an advocacy and communications perspective, we have grown our social media following by almost 15% and effectively advanced 19 different regional priorities with provincial and federal governments. And as we've just heard in previous items, our intergovernmental relations activities this year and last are really a priority as we deal with many changes in policy positions coming out of the province. You can also see on this slide the advancements of our communication efforts through a number of statistics, and these are quite impressive, so I do encourage you to read them. My office has a number of key strategic initiatives for 2024. From a climate change perspective, we have initiatives including expanding the Durham Green Home Program, launching the Durham Greener Buildings Program, which deals with office and commercial institutional spaces, supporting the Flood Ready program launch, and advancing feasibility work on low-carbon district energy opportunities, which will materialize as a result of the Go East extension and other development activities. We're also working to implement the recommendations of the 2023 equity audit, developing a new diversity, equity, and inclusion strategy, and continuing our participation in Project Search, which you've seen the students around the building. It's been a tremendous success. We're pleased to be placing interns within regional departments to build critical skills through hands-on work experience for potential employees who live with disabilities. I would now like to turn it over to Barb Goodwin, Commissioner of Corporate Services, to speak briefly on her department's 2023 accomplishments and 2024 strategic investments.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and committee members. Corporate Services covers a number of areas that offer support to the organization and play a strong customer service role to the public. In 2023, one of the notable items for Council is the deployment and training for the hybrid meeting platform for Council chambers that now has a seamless flexibility for hybrid meetings. 2 other significant areas to focus on include Service Durham 311 and cybersecurity. From a Service Durham perspective, we have enhanced self-service channels, trained staff in basic American Sign Language, and completed a number of customer service journey mapping for many of the departments, leading to the evaluation of services for transition into service requests. We have also begun the transfer of the customer service components to various departments into one cohesive area under Service Durham 311. We have also been active from a cybersecurity standpoint and have significant work still to do in this area as this area gains more prominence in the news, with municipalities being targeted for malicious and complex attacks. You can see our 2023 security statistics at the bottom of this screen. Corporate Services has a number of 2024 strategic investments planned in all areas. The two of great significance are advancing our cybersecurity stance and the continued evolution of Service Durham. The 2024 draft budget contains resources for a cyber maturity project with improvements to data and application systems, and additional staff and resources to maintain and enhance our systems. For Service Durham 311, our biggest objective in 2024 is to complete the implementation of regional services under 311 and expand this to interested local municipalities. This includes quality insurance initiatives and cloud-based contact centers. I will now turn it over to Nicole and Nancy to move the portion of the presentation specific to the overall 2024 business plans and budgets.
Thank you. And as we move to the next slide, one thing I will mention, we do have some good news and bad news since the report was drafted. The good news is we've heard from the Minister of Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship that our submission for funding from the Government of Canada Interim Housing Assistance Program for 2023 costs was approved for $4.6 million. On the bad news side, it appears that municipalities are unsuccessful in advocating for growth in the provincial gas tax funding for 2023-2024. So we have not yet heard what our allocation is as yet because they announced that by March 31st. So once we get into some of the budgets, Bill Holmes may or may not have any further details. But so good news and bad news before I dive in here. So the total 2024 budget, subject to approval today and ratification at Council in its entirety, will be $2.8 billion. Of this, $600 million represents the water supply and sanitary sewage budget that was approved in December 2023, and the balance of $2.2 billion is a property tax supported budget for 2024 before you now. So the two pie charts here provide greater detail on that property tax supported portion of the region's budget, so it excludes water and sewer. On the left side, you can see the largest gross expenditure areas include social services, regional transit, police, and roads and bridges. On the right side, the $2.184 billion property tax supported budget is funded from numerous sources, and people are always surprised when I say it's only 41% comes from property taxes, almost 23% from the province, 11% from reserves and reserve funds, and almost 10% from the federal government in this budget. There are debentures that will be issued, represents about 5% of the funding, and those debentures are for things like DRPS facility planning, modernization of the maintenance depots, Go East extension, new DRT terminals, a new indoor bus storage facility, DRT electrification, and 34 zero-emission buses through the Canada Infrastructure Bank. And lastly, the budget proposes to utilize approximately $231 million from reserves, reserve funds, gas tax, and development charges. So that's a 35.5% increase from last year. This slide represents the breakdown of the tax bill, so that 41% share that I spoke of for the regional portion for property tax supported services. And the reason why this is different is, as you'll recall, some of the departments are quite heavily subsidized, some are not, and so you see their portion of the tax levy here. So the largest component, as you can see, is police at 29.8%, followed by social services at 20%, roads and bridges almost 12%, and transit at 10%. So the 7.5% represents an annual increase of $231 on an average single detached home. So this slide illustrates the regional property tax impacts based on that budget. So there are no reassessment impacts for 2024 due to the provincial postponement of the 2020 reassessment. So the base year remains at 2016. And I always like to say that because sometimes when you look at that average home value, you tell me that you'd buy all of them if you could actually find one for that value. It is based on 2016. So for the average residential property owner in Durham, with that average CVA of $483,000, the Durham portion of the property tax bill would be $3,318, and that is includes that 7.5% budgetary increase. For a commercial property owner that has a CVA generally around $500,000, the regional portion of the bill is just shy of $5,000 and represents an increase of $348, which is, again, that 7.5% increase. And for an industrial property owner at a CVA of about $1 million, they're looking at $13,900 or so, and it's about a $973, 7.5% budgetary increase. We do reference here compared to the comparisons to 2020, and the reason why we do that is the province changed the commercial and industrial property tax rates for education purposes in 2020, and that created a very significant savings. So we just want you to be aware that compared to that, we are still doing fairly well, competitively speaking, from the overall tax bill for commercial and industrial. On the next slide, many locals do express their tax increase as a percentage of the overall bill, not just their share of the bill. So we've also done that work here, and you can see the information in the report. So we try to express it in a similar way. However, as you know, there's different local shares of the bill across the region, so it does cause a bit of a distortion here, so we've had to use averages to make this work for us. So the 7.5% increase on our share of the bill translates to about 3.9% on the totality of the bill. If you add to this, and the average local increases were about 4.9%, so that's about 1.8% of the entire bill. So ultimately, with education remaining the same, the overall tax bill increase in its entirety would be in the range of 5.7% for 2024, subject to Council's approval of the budget. A quick slide on property tax policy. The property tax study report is included in the agenda today. There are no proposed changes to tax ratios as no reassessment has occurred. With respect to reassessments, as I've mentioned previously, the longer that gap between reassessments, the greater the risk of material property tax shifts. And again, I always say it has no bearing to the region from a financial perspective. Costs the same to drive a snowplow or have a police vehicle running, regardless of the assessment of the homes. What it does is cause huge shifts between people who pay that. So we are getting quite concerned. It's now been 8 years since the last reassessment, and given what's happened in the economy over that time frame, that potential is great for some shifts. A few other items. The region's been supporting significant gravel pit assessment appeals with success. So ultimately, that's been a good news item. Unfortunately, there was a significant tax loss with a multi-residential classification appeal in the town of Ajax. So that's a financial impact to us. And there's just some note that we are doing research around what the economy and all of the work from home and reduction in office space, for example, those kinds of impacts will have a bearing between our residential and non-residential taxpayers. So we are doing some strategy work there. And now I will turn it over to Nicole for a portion of the budget. She and I will be coming back and forth at various points.
Thanks, Nancy. So there's a number of base budget pressures and non-discretionary items that need to be accommodated within the 2024 budget in order to maintain the existing service levels for our residents and businesses. Inflationary pressures on the 2024 budget alone total $8.4 million. In addition, there's significant capital cost escalations that put additional pressures on our 2024 capital budget and 9-year forecast. The 2024 budget also includes annualizations and decisions that were approved in year, including debt servicing costs for the initial borings for the long-term care home in North Pickering. The individual budgets booklets that are linked to today's agenda provide additional details on a department-by-department level of the base budget pressures each face. Accommodating these base budget pressures while investing in critical services required the use of all possible financing sources, including the use of approximately $321 million in financing from reserves, reserve funds, gas tax, and development charges in order to offset and fund both capital and operating impacts. As well, we were able to reduce the base budget by approximately $6.9 million through our detailed line-by-line reviews. And attachment 6 to the budget report provides additional details on the specific allocations of reserves and reserve funds throughout the budget. As was highlighted in the December guideline report and presentation, the fiscal sustainability of municipal governments is challenged. The region's proposed 2024 budget includes $253.5 million, or 28.2%, of property tax levy funding required for health and social services. This tax levy funding has increased by $87.2 million, or 52.4% over the last 5 years. This is not unique in the region of Durham, with this trend being reported by many single and upper-tier municipalities across the province. The announced reduction in 2026 through 2028 of the federal funding under the Reaching Home programs for homelessness supports, as well as the 1% increase in provincial public health funding, which does not keep pace with inflationary pressures, is anticipated to put further pressure on the regional tax base to support health and social services in the coming years. Durham Council has been proactive on this front by supporting AMO's call for social and economic prosperity review, as well as FCM's call for a new financial framework for raising municipal revenues. In addition to supporting these sector advocacy efforts, the region continues to raise these calls for action through its various ongoing government relations activities. As Elaine mentioned at the beginning of our presentation, the 2024 budget is focused on providing critical investments in frontline core programs and services that meet our community's needs. The following 5 slides highlight in detail the significant investments proposed in the 2024 budget in the critical program areas of housing, homelessness supports, regional transit, paramedic service, police services, and climate action. The 2024 proposed budget includes total investments in housing and homelessness supports of $137.2 million. This is an increase of $19.9 million, or 17% from the 2023 approved budget. Of this increase, the region's investment alone in housing and homeless supports totals approximately $80.7 million, an increase of $5.2 million, or 6.9% from the 2023 approved budget. And approximately 8% of our tax levy goes towards housing and homelessness supports. This increase in regional property tax funding for housing and homelessness supports is possible in part to receiving a share of the Pickering Casino revenues. So as an aside, the 2024 budget includes an increase in the Pickering Casino revenue from $4.5 million in the 2023 budget to $6 million in the 2024 budget. This slide outlines the number of specific investments for housing and homelessness included in the 2024 budget. And a couple of highlights include $8 million for the region's at-home incentive program, $7.3 million for housing development and redevelopment, which Nancy will speak to in greater detail later in the presentation, $8.3 million for rent supplements, $47.9 million for community housing supports, $3.4 million for regional supportive housing, $1.8 million for Durham's newly launched outreach program, and $27.4 million for housing and homelessness supports, including community supports, warming centers, and shelters. This slide provides an overview of Durham Region's transit investment proposed for the 2024 budget. The 2024 budget was informed by the 10-year service and financing strategy endorsed by Regional Council and requires $92.8 million in property tax revenue, an increase of 16.5% over the 2023 budget. The proposed funding increase includes an increase of 59,665 revenue service hours at a net cost of $5.9 million. This is 85% of the projected revenue service hour growth that was identified for 2024 in the 10-year strategy. In total, the 2024 budget provides for 569,876 hours of conventional service and 174,692 hours of on-demand service. In addition, investments in new critical positions to fill existing gaps and minimize safety, security, and operational risks, while not identified in this strategy, are also included in the proposed 2024 budget at an estimated cost of $1.1 million. Additional fares and UPass revenue of $3.8 million helped partially offset the cost pressures that we've talked about. In addition to these operating impacts, there's also significant capital projects that are proposed for 2024. These are in part funded through regional reserves and reserve funds and debentures, as well as senior government funding. A number of these projects are contingent on the approval of the region's grant application under the Federal Zero Emissions Transit Fund. Highlights of these projects include $239.7 million for the construction of a new indoor bus storage and servicing facility in North Oshawa, $8.7 million for design costs for the Raleigh bus storage facility rebuild that will include electrification infrastructure, $5 million for the design of electrification infrastructure upgrades at the Westney Transit Facility, $65.7 million for 34 electric buses and supporting electrification infrastructure, and $21 million for new terminals and bus stops. You'll note in the report, recommendation V indicates that staff will report back to TAC and F&A committee in advance of the 2025 budget, should sufficient senior government funding not be forthcoming to support the implementation of Durham Region's transit fleet electrification strategy and forecasted service enhancements. This slide provides an overview of the investment in paramedic services. Like transit, the 2024 budget is aligned with the 10-year paramedic strategy and includes $42.3 million in property tax funding, an increase of 11.4%, an increase of 11.4% over the 2023 approved budget. Key investments include 36 additional hours of daily paramedic service. This includes the hiring of 16 new paramedics, 8 ACPs and 8 PCPs, advanced care paramedics and primary care paramedics, and 2 new ambulances at an estimated cost of $3 million. Also aligned with the 10-year strategy is the hiring of 2 new full-time support and management staff positions for 911 response, a supervisor and a stockkeeper. $0.4 million for advanced care paramedic training. The budget also includes $0.8 million for our primary care outreach program, as well as $4.9 million in provincial funding for the community paramedicine programs delivered by Paramedic Services. Significant capital improvements are included, including $2 million for land acquisition and design costs for the Bowmanville Paramedic Station, as well as an additional $0.4 million for the design of the new South Oshawa Paramedic Station, and $0.5 million for improvements to our existing paramedic stations. The next slide highlights oh, there we go, sorry. Okay. Yeah. Okay, sorry about that. This slide here presents some of our highlights. Oh, I skipped one. Sorry, that was completely unintentional. I was excited about climate change. I'm sorry. Yes, sorry about that. I was wondering why my notes are talking about police here. Apologies for that. Sorry, Chair. So as Elaine mentioned at the outset of our presentation, the 2024 proposed Durham Regional Police Service budget requires $268 million in property tax funding, an increase of 8.3% for the police. Highlights of their budget submission include 25 additional frontline officers and 51 additional uniform and civilian positions supporting investigative and operational support units, increased investment for education, training, and wellness programs. Durham Regional Police Service budget also includes a number of major capital items that include a new dedicated police headquarters facility, the relocation of their specialized services, improvements to the Central West Division, and an investment in the Regional Reporting Center. As mentioned in Section 5.6 of the budget report, Durham Regional Police Service was able to achieve the council-approved budget guideline, in part through the deferral of the start date for the 76 new positions from July 1st to September 1st of 2024. This is not consistent with the region's practice where all new positions are to be effective July 1st or earlier in order to help minimize the impact of the current year budget decisions on following budget years. By deferring the start date for 2 months, the annualization impacts for the 2025 budget increased by $1.7 million from $2.6 million to $4.3 million. For context, $4.3 million in staff annualization costs represent a 1.6% increase in DRPS's budget, or an increase of approximately 0.5% on the region's overall levy. As Nancy will speak to later in the presentation, Durham Regional Police have advised that they are projecting additional capital and staffing pressures over the forecast period as well. So on to climate change now. In 2019, Durham Regional Council declared a climate emergency and set a greenhouse gas reduction target of net zero by 2045. In addition to the initiatives Elaine highlighted in the Office of the CAO's 2024 budget highlights, This slide illustrates a number of investments proposed in 2024 to help the region move towards its 2045 target. These include advancement of the region's light-duty fleet electrification strategy in both the Works Department and DRPS, continued utilization of recycled materials in 2 road construction projects planned for 2024, and completion of greenhouse gas reduction pathway feasibility studies for up to 55 regional facilities, which will lay the groundwork for future energy retrofit projects. Installation of solar panels at RHQ are also included. Ongoing implementation of the region's cycling plan includes construction of approximately 19.36 kilometers of cycling infrastructure to be implemented as part of our roads construction projects, as well as $0.9 million that have been allocated to advance shovel readiness of cycling network infill projects that are to be undertaken on road segments that are not planned for widening or rehabilitation in the forecast. And lastly, advancement of the development of the terms of reference for the Metaway EA, as well as a wayfinding strategy. Both are being undertaken in partnership with area municipalities. So in addition to the critical investments in the 5 main program areas just discussed, the 2024 budget also includes a number of investments to advance the goals of the region's strategic plan. In addition to the highlights Elaine and Barb spoke of earlier for the Office of the CAO and Corporate Services, this slide also outlines a number of these priorities, which are also detailed in attachment 3 to the report. While I'll not read through the list, I wanted to highlight the inclusion of station design costs for the Lakeshore East GO extension to Bowmanville, which will be subject of future reports to committee and council, as well as the ongoing investment in Durham OneNet for improved broadband connectivity for residents and businesses across the region. I'll now turn it back to Nancy to walk you through the proposed 10-year capital plan.
Thank you. This is a new slide for this year. So Council, as you're aware, you have a number of initiatives currently in progress to support the further development of additional affordable housing. And some of those things in progress include a 10-year housing and homelessness plan, redevelopment planning and business case work in support of revitalization efforts at the Malaga Drive and Christine Crescent sites owned by the Durham Region Local Housing Corporation, redevelopment planning, due diligence and business case work in support of a new mixed income communities at 300 Ritson Road South in Oshawa and across the road here in Whitby, and the consultation work necessary to determine how unallocated space will be used at the 1635 Dundas Street property in Whitby. So given the significance of all these projects, a starting footprint has been incorporated into the proposed 2024 business plan and budget. This slide outlines the potential future capital implications that are currently not financed, along with the potential number of new units that could come from this. Based on a straight rebuild model, $1.8 billion would be needed over the next 10 years. So clearly the straight rebuild of all properties listed is not the intention, but it provides a baseline order of magnitude of the work that needs to be done. So we will be looking for significant partnerships with the province and federal governments, as well as strategic private partnerships to bring this to fruition, along with individual council decisions regarding the trajectory of each site. So this is just to put into context all of the things that are in play or will be in play. And of course, through Social Services Department, there will be a lot of reports forthcoming to make some plans and decisions around various properties as we've noted. From the capital forecast perspective, the Durham Region of Durham owns and is responsible for the maintenance and renewal and replacement of assets. So for today's purposes, that includes transportation, facilities, fleet, and equipment that are part of the tax levy supported budget. And if you take the value of those assets divided by the number of households, each household essentially has invested in about $82,690 in regional assets. The major capital program for 2024 is significant at $629 million, and you can find the details to that on attachment 5 of the report. And in each individual department booklet, you can actually see details of project by project. The forecast total for the property tax supported budgets is $5.1 billion, with roads, transit, and police representing the largest components, and these numbers as well are significantly higher than last year. Some highlights for 2024, general tax levy financing is $34 million. Reserve and reserve fund financing, including development charges for capital, is $288 million. Debenture financing is $110 million, and grant and other financing is just shy of $200 million. Of critical note in the forecast as well, we're looking at general levy financing of $760 million. That's illustrated in the table. The future year's forecast does require steep increases in levy funding for capital purposes. DC Reserve and Reserve Fund needs will be $3.2 billion. Debenture financing over the forecast, $804 million, and grant and other financing of $254 million. So we have said for the last year or two that we are entering into a significant period of capital requirements, and that's what you can see reflected here in this year's $629 million and the forecast $5.1 billion that will be needed. I'm full of good news today. Bill 23 remains a significant challenge to the region of Durham finances. So in Durham, the impact of Bill 23 and the related legislation on development charge receipts is particularly significant in the early years of the 10-year forecast due to the rate phase-in and freezing impacts associated with the region's new DC bylaw, which came into effect July 23, and for general services, and the Transit 1 that came into effect July 22 that had retroactive application of Bill 23. So when we've done the math on the on 2023 development charge receipts and loss of collections for things that we can no longer do, like housing, we are at currently a shortfall up to December 31st, 2023 of $56.3 million. And that does not include, as you may be aware, we issued the Seton Development Charge area-specific study this past week. The public meeting is at the end of the month. Bill 23 will have a bearing on that. Seton traditionally was set up to not have any cost impact, but Bill 23 does not exempt Seton from that issue. So the total impact over the 10 years of foregone DC revenue is now estimated at $470 million. This is just the tax side. Off the top of my head, I think water sewer was in the vicinity of $640 million. So all this has to be funded from non-development charge sources. So we do have a recommendation in the budget that any surplus from 2023, when the final number is determined, be transferred into the growth-related general infrastructure reserve fund, and we've incorporated 0.5% of the tax levy increase dedicated to this. That's part of the 7.5. If we look at a funding model for the forecast, we're looking at property tax increases of approximately 1.55% incrementally from 25 to 2028 timeframe, solely to address Bill 23 and related legislation. As Council, as Committee is keenly aware, the initial estimates for the 24 budget year were at 9.75%. Council did ultimately approve a 7.5% tax levy increase with 2.5% for DRPS, 0.5% for Bill 23, and that left 4.5% for the remainder of regional services. I trust that in this presentation, staff have clearly articulated both the need for the 7.5 and the value of the services being provided to taxpayers and residents for that level of funding. Nicole spoke very detailed on those major initiatives that we have. So for committee awareness, we have attempted to summarize the major things that were deferred or phased in order to accomplish that 4.5% for regional services. One of the key things, as noted in an earlier slide, is the draw from reserves and reserve funds has increased by 35.5% to $321 million. Some of the specifics, I'm not going to read this detailed list, but from a works perspective, for example, significant items included deferral of funding for road rehabilitation and bridge rehabilitation strategies, and that will have a long-term impact on our capital program. As the Commissioner will tell you, if you don't rehab a road, then you have to rebuild it much sooner. So that will be a challenge as we move forward. Also, as mentioned at the Works Committee, the Enhanced Green Bin Program had to move to a 50% subsidy for replacement of green bins. From a transit perspective, you've heard today, we've managed to achieve 85% of the goal of the growth in service hours in the 10-year strategy and enhance some priority staffing needs from the General Manager of Transit, but we did only manage 1.6% rather than the full 2%. And I have to say, throughout the organization, all departments contributed to finding savings as detailed on this slide. And again, I won't go through all of that wording. So perhaps the most depressing slide I'll present, which is setting a record given what we've talked about to date, is looking forward. So we are really struggling with significant pressures, and they're widespread across all service areas, and is one of the key reasons for advocating for a new municipal fiscal framework with the province. So known pressures on the 2025 budget as a result of hopefully what will be approved this year. We have staff annualization costs for the new positions, and it's critical to note that while the new staff list seems large at 276, it is linked to all those key deliverables and strategies, such as the 76 for DRPS, 94 for DRT, 19 for paramedics, 16 for Children's Services, new facility, about in the 20s pre-approved for housing, homelessness, planning, and Bill 23. We also have the annualization of expansions to support DRPS deemed critical to the board with that deferred start date that was mentioned. And we have the implementation plan for transit and paramedics. So over the course of the forecast period, there's also additional pressures that are faced here, and they're listed on the chart, and they're a result of the region's growing population, changes in demographics, and evolving community needs and asset maintenance. So some of the key ones, we've talked about climate change initiatives and our GHG emissions targets. Without money going there, we won't get there. So that's a pretty easy message. Social housing redevelopment and ongoing operating for an increased portfolio of units. Homelessness crisis supports. When we're looking at DRPS, they were very clear in their critical needs, and the Police Services Board and the Chief of Police are working hard, but I have a hard time believing that it would be a reduction from this year's request, given the needs that they've expressed. Further impacts of Bill 23, I've mentioned 1.55%. Roads and bridges forecast needs, that could be a couple of percentage points in the short run to get those dollars back up into play. Facility expansions, the new long-term care home in Seton, we're looking at 2.5% needing to be phased in. And then our bad news, as I mentioned earlier, the potential loss of the provincial gas tax funding that goes directly to transit. And we are also concerned about the Canada Community Building Fund, which is formerly the federal gas tax. They are looking at realigning that. So I'm concerned that they're going to redirect that to projects for new housing. We require that desperately for rehabilitation. It gets used on our road programs. So if they divert it or put requirements around it being required for new only, then that leaves a massive hole in our rehabilitation program. So I'm going to turn it back over to Nicole quickly for an engagement in a video, and then Elaine will close up. Thank you.
Thanks, Nancy. So as staff continue to explore new ways to engage with more residents and businesses and seek their input on the region's budget, I want to take a moment to thank Christian Timperley from our team, as well as the very talented staff in the Communications and Engagement Division under Allison's leadership, for their efforts to continue to build and improve upon the region's budget engagement efforts each year. On January the 11th of 24, we hosted a virtual town hall where more than 10,000 residents joined us over the phone or online to provide their input and ask questions of the region's senior leadership team. This event was also broadcasted live on Rogers Television, and the region received over 200 submissions this year, which was an increase of 60% from last year. Feedback from residents has been very consistent in highlighting the importance of affordability, investments in homelessness, housing, and transit. Additional engagement activities are planned following Council's approval of the 2024 budget to provide the public with information on the investments included in the budget and the outcomes of these critical investments for our residents. These activities include an updated budget spotlight document, as well as an update to our award-winning Value Stories video. With your indulgence, I'll just take a couple of minutes to give you a sneak peek of our 2024, sneak peek of our draft of our 2024 video, and then I'll turn it over to Elaine for closing comments.
Durham Region provides a wide range of programs and services to a growing and diverse community of residents and businesses. These programs and services are funded by the Durham budget. Through the annual budget, the region invests in responsive and effective paramedic services that protect the health and well-being of our diverse and growing community. Reliable public transit that keeps residents and visitors moving for a more livable, healthy, and connected community. Housing and homelessness to support all our residents in meaningful and impactful ways. The Durham Regional Police Service to ensure the safety and well-being of our citizens. Economic prosperity and resiliency to support the well-being of our current and future residents and businesses through economic growth and development opportunities. Community vitality with services that build strong, efficient, and vibrant neighborhoods like road maintenance, active transportation networks, and road safety. Environmental responsibility, leading the way in the climate emergency response to foster sustainable communities and a cleaner environment through diversion, waste management, and a low-carbon plan. Durham is more vibrant, more diverse, and growing faster than just about any place in Ontario. The Durham budget is investing in what matters. Visit durham.ca/budget to learn more. Durham Region provides a...
Thank you, Nicole. So the presentation today and its attachments and the links to the various budget booklets highlight the significant fiscal pressures facing the region in 2024. A very difficult message to communicate is that these pressures are not just requiring a one-year incremental increase with a return to traditional levy increases in the future. Along with the continued incremental funding that will be tied to paramedics, transit, and DRPS, Council has approved the construction of the 5th regional operated long-term care facility, which Nancy just spoke to. This will require operating costs that will increase by 3% to 4%, and this tax increase will be phased in over the next 3 years. It includes a greater level of debenture financing. In addition, there will be financial impacts for the opening of new regional operated childcare centres planned for 2025 and the implications of an expanding housing portfolio and support to housing providers to accomplish the at-home in Durham priorities. As mentioned, the implementation for financing shortfalls stemming from Bill 23 are now being felt as the capital project comes on stream. We continue to talk to the province about these pressures, and we understand that the minister continues to review the impacts of Bill 23, but we have no indication yet if any changes will be made. Staff will pursue all opportunities for provincial and federal partnerships to offset as much capital and operating impacts as possible. As mentioned, we have incorporated a number of advocacy recommendations pertaining to provincial and federal investments in Durham for infrastructure, housing, transit, and homelessness, to name just a few. And this concludes our formal presentation for today. We would be happy to answer any questions going forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ladies, for that presentation. I'm going to allow questions of the presentation. I do not want to get into debate about the budget at this point. We'll have that opportunity when we get to the report itself. So I'd like questions to the delegates. There's a wide berth there, but I don't want to get into debate about this over that. You'll have an opportunity for a fulsome debate when we get there. So is there any questions of the delegate? Okay, Councillor Mayor Schumer, you're first. Again, questions to the presentation.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Yeah, forgive me if I'm bouncing around a little bit here. I'll try to keep it in order. But it was mentioned during the presentation that whatever surplus there may be in 2023 has essentially been dedicated. Given that we are almost 1 quarter through 2024, do we have a ballpark idea of what that surplus would be?
So through the chair, we aren't completed as yet, as you referred to, but the latest numbers for the general tax levy component of the budget, we're probably looking at about 19 to 20 million as a surplus.
Okay, thank you very much. The slide 4, I believe that's just gave a brief rundown of the CAO, and there was 583,000 on an annualized basis for staffing. And I don't want to get too ahead into any reports, but how many and what is that again?
It's sorry, through you, Mr. Chair. It's actually 4 staff in communications. 1 was approved last year, and it's the annualization of that position. 2 are the conversion of temporary positions to permanent. And the 4th, I'm just looking at to ensure I'm correct in this, has been absorbed within the operating budget of the department, so it did not cause a pressure. The reality is, as we continue to grow and launch our various housing targets and infrastructure expansion, is putting a tremendous pressure on communications as they have to go through the normal public communicating process, engagement, as well as all the government relations work that also entails. That's the only component in the CAO's office that has increased staff this year. And I'm just going to look to Allison to make sure I got that right. Thank you, Allison.
Okay, thank you. Slide 6 spoke to a number of things, but it did give some stats on cyber security.
If we're going to talk about cybersecurity, we're going to have to go in camera.
Well, I guess that was going to be my question, Mr.
Okay.
Chair. Given that stat of a cyber attack every minute or so, are we going to see something more in camera soon about that? Because that's really worrisome, and I can't believe we would kind of let that go if somebody was trying to break into this building every minute. So I'm just wondering, indeed, where will we be?
We
hearing
could,
about
if we wanted to deal with that question today, we would have to go in camera, but we can do an undertaking to give a full briefing in regards to that issue at a future meeting, if that would be of benefit.
And I think that would be great.
Okay.
I don't expect to get too many answers today in camera, but if we could be seeing that, because that's a worrisome stat.
Okay.
So we've got this very big overall presentation here, and right at towards the end, it did speak about going forward. Over the last few years, we've heard 2.5%, 5%. This year was hovering around 10 originally. Do we have an idea, and I know the CAO alluded to future property tax increases, but I think it would be prudent to really get an idea. I mean, Durham is known for its long-term budgeting and forecasting, and I think if there was ever a time for us to be seeing that, it would be now. I realize it's not going to be a pretty picture. This is going to be extremely ugly, but I think we've really got to see everything going forward in upwards of 10 years, because I really worry where all of this is going. And that will lead me to my next question and I'm sorry, I think it was on slide 23, spoke to the deferred or phased savings. Deferred.
So you asked a question about future tax increases. So would you like an answer now?
Sure.
Okay.
Know where that's going.
Well, I'd like to know too, because there seem to be 2 here, 2 there, 1.5 there.
I just didn't know if we really had that on.
I don't know the answer, but I'll give the commissioner a chance to respond.
So through the chair, because we have so many unknowns with respect to the provincial and federal issues, we don't have a projection for 2025 with a solid number. Clearly, if you add up all those things I referenced, that's double digits at this point, and we can't allow that to stand. So clearly, that's not what we would be bringing forward. But if you just add up all those various things I spoke to. So we do long-term forecasting, particularly on the capital side. That has been really enhanced in the last couple of years, and we're quite aware that we drop in all of these references to tax levy increases. So our next effort will be to try to put together a much more comprehensive tax levy now that we can build on the capital that has been really enhanced in the last couple of years.
Oh, okay, thank you. I think that would be greatly appreciated by everybody, good and bad. Slide 23 spoke to deferred or phased savings that staff achieved. And I didn't say it originally, but I want to thank staff for this budget. It is by no means an easy task anywhere, and the region is just that much more difficult to do all this work. But from what I saw and from what I heard, it sounded like things were merely deferred. Or they're being phased in, which sounds like we're just kicking the problem down the road. Was anything canceled? Was anything, in any departments, was it considered this is we can't afford this? We're going to have to cut it. Is that part of the thought process in these numbers, and will that be going forward?
Commissioner?
So through the chair, we went through a number of ways of trying to go at this. You're quite correct. The bulk of them were deferring things that were still deemed important, not wish list items. But we did do some aggressive line-by-line savings. That was about $6.8 million throughout all the departments. We did factor in as much as we could new fees and charges, so that's about $4.5 million. We did look to trying to include as many confirmed subsidies as we could. That brought about another $300,000 to the plate. And then we took a relook at fuel pricing because, again, that's been a bit of a yo-yo and uncertainty, but we have cut about $2.6 million. So there was about $14.5 million in round numbers that we went through to try to aggressively find in order to help offset this.
Okay, thank you. And I'll just end with, I think we all will look forward to seeing how things are going to play out in the medium to long term. Because, I saw on slide 21, the financing from the tax levy for capital, 286% increase over 4 years. I don't know how that can even remotely be sustainable, coupled with everything else.
And if I may, through the chair, that comes back to the question that Chair Henry brought forward. Right now, we are seeing, I'll call it an absence of infrastructure funding programs. And usually there's always some that are ongoing that we can then incorporate. Right now, we are in this weird spot of a limbo where the Investing in Canada Infrastructure Program is over. The new ones nothing new has really been announced. The region's not been eligible for ones that the locals are. So we have this sort of weird vacuum, and that's really causing that problem. So if we can get some real leverage from those advocacy recommendations, that will change the shape of what you see. And that's part of the challenge in trying to forecast is normally we wouldn't be in this gap of not having any real concrete announcements around infrastructure funding.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, committee, let's follow Mayor Schumer's lead about asking questions. Rather than debate, we'll have an opportunity for debate. So that is my attaboy to Walter. Councillor Lee.
Thank you, Chair, and I will work diligently to earn my attaboy. In regards to transit, we had a few delegates mention the drop from 2% to 1.6%. Just a question in terms of what does that actually translate in terms of the service that was outlined last year in the long-term, in the transit service and financing strategy, and then what to 2024? What's the delta?
So I'll answer two things, and then perhaps General Manager Holmes might want to comment. One of the things that you will recall is that the 10-year study had, we called it lumpy. It was because of the timing of when things would come into stray. So the 2% was an artificial number selected that over the course of the 10 years would pick up those gaps. So unfortunately, the early years was where the higher numbers were. So just to be clear, even at a 2, we weren't going to accomplish exactly what was in the 10-year plan in this year because we're doing this smoothing over a number of years. So that's important to keep in mind. And from a number perspective, 0.4% translates to about $3.2 million, $3.3 million. With respect to implications, if I may turn that over to General Manager Holmes.
Mr. Holmes?
Thank you, and through the chair. So as indicated in the presentation, we are delivering 85% of the planned service. So where we had planned on delivering roughly 70,000, we're delivering 60,000. There are impacts in the report that we can talk about then, but really what it comes down to is not being able to achieve the growth in the network that was originally planned to that level. It would also require, again, we, as part of the deferrals, there were some other admin staff that are required. If we were to look at adding that capacity to the network, we would require other supportive resources to be able to train and deliver and et cetera. So right now, it's that 10,000 hours and roughly the value that the commissioner had indicated.
In terms of additional routes, can you quantify that? Is it like 60 less routes, 50 plus? Can we put a number on that?
No, so through the chair, because the network is very dynamic across the region, and again, it's not necessarily specific route based, but frequencies, expansion of routes that already exist, et cetera. So it's not new routes. We wouldn't be able to characterize it that way.
So, to summarize, the key sticking point would be the 10,000 serviceable hours, correct?
Through the chair, correct, and perhaps the way to categorize that is capacity.
Sure.
In the network, so it is that lower level of capacity relative to where we had expected to be.
Okay. Thank you very much, and thank you, Chair.
Attaboy. Councillor McDougall.
Thank you. I'm not going to work so hard for that. A question in general for the commissioner. In consideration of in creating this rather difficult budget, which I know what it is, or know how hard it would be, or I don't know actually, has there been consideration given as we move forward from when you started creating this budget to where we are now, to seeing inflation returning to more normal levels? Similarly with the interest rates bouncing up and down as they are, with the projections in terms of hopefully returning to more normal levels as we head through to 2025, 2026.
So through the chair, the answer is yes. So fuel, for example, we took another look at that and are hopeful, notwithstanding carbon tax pricing and all those other things. We did take a look and do a reset with fuel tax. There has been some of the contract costs and things are coming in a little bit better than we anticipated from our September guideline position to now. However, we still are finding on the, I'll call it a capacity issue. So for example, in the road side of things, the same dollar doesn't get you the same number of kilometers that it used to, even with inflation adjusting back. And the technical and skilled resources are very challenging, and so that tends to have an implication. But absolutely, where we could see that occurring, we're also trying to avoid issuing debt, and we're floating that through reserve funds with this view that if things start to drop down, then that will save us that cost impact when we factor it in. So where we can move on it, we are certainly being strategic there.
So through the chair, would it be more fair to say that those are hard projections to incorporate fully into the 2024 budget, but we should see them more as we move towards the 2025 budget? I know we're still working on 2024.
Certainly through the chair. The only thing to keep in mind is, sadly, there's never any reverse inflation. So it's a new baseline that we go forward from, right? So unfortunately, that's a fact of reality.
I think Argentina might have saw that in the 70s, and it's not pretty. I do have a couple more questions in terms of the presentation. There's a slide 7 and 8, which has a pie graph on one slide and then a bar chart on another slide. And it, just for example, in the bar graph it shows, or in the first slide it shows that police are 15% of our gross budget and transit is 21.7% of our gross budget. And then the following slide, it says, in terms of an annual residential tax bill, it says that police are 29% of the budget, or 30% of the budget, rounded up, and transit is 10.3% of the budget. Can you explain the differences in those two slides a little more accurately for myself and for others?
Absolutely.
Through the
So
chair.
the slide that, through the chair, the slide that says gross funding, which is the pie charts, that's the total spend in its entirety, regardless of where it's funded. So, for example, social services, they spend the 29%, which you see, but they get a fair amount of subsidy. So when you flip to the property tax, which is the bar chart side, this is the net tax piece of it. So one is the gross spending in its totality, regardless of where it's financed from. And the second one is when we actually drill down to the tax bill. All of the expenses that are subsidized and from reserve funds and all that are subtracted out. This is what remains that goes to the taxpayer.
So in some ways, in terms of the tax levy, we get more bang for, well, I don't know if I want to say that, but more bang for our buck in terms of transit because a certain amount goes into transit and then it multiplies out into service. Whereas police, it's fully funded by just the tax bill itself.
That's correct. Police, they do get some subsidy, but in the grand scheme of things, it's pretty minor and it's very specialized for an individual issue. So sadly, from their perspective, there is not a lot of funding beyond property taxes for police.
Okay, thank you. And then another question I had was on, there was a slide, and I don't have the number in front of me, unfortunately, but it was on the social housing and the rebuilds in the social housing. And I think the number total was 6.8 billion? Slide 20 it was, or 1.8 billion, and it represents 2,920 units, I believe. And that works out to roughly $629,000 a rebuild per unit. Is that correct?
So if I may, again, through the chair, the purpose of this is simply to give you high-level numbers as if we were going to rebuild them all. And they are budgeted on the Durham Build Standard, which is all of the climate change initiatives. So that has a very different bearing than a cost driver where you're not including any of that. But again, we would also be looking at 1/3 subsidies from the province, 1/3 from the feds. In a number of these areas, we would be looking at public-private partnerships. The intent really of this slide wasn't to scare you with 1.8 billion, but more so that you could see.
But it did.
So that you could see the number of initiatives that are in play, and that this committee and council will have to make decisions as each one comes forward. Some may not be rebuilt at all. It could be a different market strategy that happens. So this is just to encapsulate so that you see in one place what all of that looks like. And then the Housing Division through Social Services will be bringing a lot of information through the course of the year on certainly I'll say the top half of this list. And then as time evolves, you will see more action on the others. Part of it as well, sorry to be lengthy here, is in response to the question we get over the 1,000 units that we've committed to, and are we ever going to get there? So this kind of gives you, again, a sense of what some of those numbers of units are like in play.
Okay, and to follow up on that, so I assume each item in the budget is tied to the strategic plan, which is tied to a business case for each of those plans. So in terms of, you indicated that there's an elevated cost to rebuild those units, and part of those units is to the Durham Business Standard, or the Durham Building Standard. Have we done the business case on that to verify that we're getting our best bang for the buck out of that standard? Through Mr. Chair?
Maybe I'll start through the chair, and perhaps the CAO may elaborate as the Climate Change Resources report through the CAO's office. So the Durham Build Standard was in response to Council's declaration of the climate emergency and direction to us to make a change. And a lot of our issues do come from built infrastructure. So we have built in those standards at an estimate level here, but certainly as each facility comes forward, Council would see what the cost analysis and the business case is for moving forward for those facilities with the components that would be discussed through that. I'm not sure if the CAO would like to add.
I think that covers it well, but when the policy was developed and brought to council, we had done a cost-benefit analysis, recognizing in some areas costs will go up, but we'll also achieve savings in other areas. I just wanted to add also for the various housing projects, you will begin to see in the next quarter the business plans associated with various projects, which will advise on the business model we're recommending to go forward with. And as council knows, in the case of our local housing company, Infrastructure Ontario has been working with us to help us get to the best business model. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So I just wanted to clarify, so whether we put it in terms of the lens of the Durham Building Standard and the housing and the added cost for that, or for Seton, or if I'm looking at Mr. Holmes, the buses in terms of, you know, when we electrify the buses and we have a gain there environmentally, is that a greater gain than buying more buses and providing more service with traditional buses? We're doing those business cases line by line when we're making these decisions. Through you, Mr. Chair.
So if I may, we actually got an email question kind of related to that, so I'll refer to Mr. Holmes to reply to that question.
Thank you. And we're in, through the chair, we're in an interesting time, and you know, we're very excited and we're anticipating funding from the Zero Emission Transit Fund, an announcement there. It is a time-limited program, but our first 3 to 4 years of purchase of electric buses will be heavily subsidized to the point where they're more cost-effective than buying a diesel bus. The other component to this is the fact that the manufacturing capacity within the industry is gradually decreasing when it comes to diesel buses. Everyone's moving now to electric buses. So we need the buses if we're going to add service. But at this point in time, given the various funding that's available, it is more cost effective for us to continue on with our electrification program than to consider diesel.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. No, I'm not questioning the program. I'm just questioning in terms of when the original decision is made, you know, where are we looking at these items through that lens? And I'm most certain that you're going to find that your maintenance will be cheaper in the long run, et cetera, on the electric side. And my last question for clarification is just the slide, it says it has an emotional model of care. Slide 19, thank you. What exactly is that? Just out of curiosity.
So if I may, I will refer that to our Commissioner of Social Services.
Stella?
Thank you. Through the chair. We have seen over the last many years a rise in dementia in our long-term care homes. And a lot of our residents are coming to us when they've been at home for a very long time without any supports, and they're coming to us with very high needs. And we're looking at a new model of care. There are different models throughout the world, and we're looking to create one for Durham that will support the needs of residents with dementia. So different kind of model, different way of different rec programs, the way we manage their day-to-day care, the way we dine with them, food that they eat. It's very interesting. So we will bring something forth to council to look at in the future when we have created a model that we think would work for the regional homes.
Okay, thank you very much.
I'll give you a pat, not a attaboy. Councillor Wu.
Yeah, thank you. And through the chair, and just picking up on some of my colleagues, slide 15, Durham Region Transit. And some of that, when I'm looking, and I know the commissioner did speak to the funding, some of this with the asterisk, the 34 electric buses, design electrification structure at Westney, the big ticket item, construction new indoor bus storage. Now, predicated on the approval of federal zero emissions tax fund grant funding. And I think you did speak to that. What if we don't get that?
So through the chair, because of the nature of the imminence of the 2024 budget, we actually have to put those asterisks in because we can't proceed with that sheer magnitude. We can't proceed without those approvals. So if we don't get what we're looking for through those approvals, whether it be a lower amount or no approval at all, then those budget items would have to come back to council to say, what do you want to do with this? Because sometimes when we indicate future funding, there's more time to think about the outcome. Here, because of timing, our understanding is that it should be very, very soon. We had hoped that it would actually have been announced in March. That's how imminent we thought it was. But if it's dramatically different, then that will affect things, and we won't have any option but to come to committee and council to talk about what that means.
Okay, thank you for that. And through the chair, and I'll direct my question to the Bill Holmes. The electric buses, now, is there anything in the pipeline as far as autonomous buses? I think we did a trial. Can you give me any idea? Bill?
Thank you. And through the chair, as you referenced, we had a highly successful pilot of an autonomous vehicle a few years ago. And one of the highlights that came out of that was the outcome in terms of the technology truly needs to advance much further before we would ever consider having these vehicles out within our community. So there is no imminent plans that we have for reintroducing autonomous vehicles as part of the network beyond perhaps some future testing, et cetera, similar to what we did before. But that's not within the period of at least our 10-year plan through 2032.
Okay, thank you. Just want to go to slide 20 again. And I just want to get a rough idea with social housing, let's say affordable housing, subsidized housing. Was that something, are we the only province in Canada that's been downloaded to?
So through the chair, you're quite correct. Ontario is the province in the country that funds social housing on the property tax base. So they may have involvement in delivering it, but Ontario is where it's funded on the property tax base, or big portions of it.
Now, would you know, out of the 444, well, include Toronto, any talk about uploading, similar to the Gardner and Don Valley Parkway, to the provincial government?
So I will ask whether the CAO has any intel there. Certainly in the finance circles, I've heard nothing, but I'll pass that.
Similar, no discussions to that end. Thank you.
Maybe that's something that should be taken up because that is quite a burden on municipalities. That's my opinion. Now, speaking about AMO, and slide 13 did speak to support AMO's call for social and economic prosperity review. I would imagine that has gone to all the municipalities in Ontario. Do you have any idea of where that's going other than municipalities supporting that and any traction?
So through the chair, again, I'll give you insights from what I've heard, and perhaps the CAO may have heard more from other circles. It's certainly been endorsed by a great number of municipalities. And you see in our weekly CIP agendas, you will often see a copy and a resolution from partner municipalities. The last I heard, because the provincial budget is imminent, again, from the finance circles that I'm in, there wasn't any particular hope that there was going to be anything in this upcoming provincial budget. That doesn't necessarily mean to say that nothing will happen, but that's what I've heard. But again, perhaps the CAO and her circles may have heard something different.
No, I haven't heard anything different myself. The only thing that I mentioned in the presentation was Municipal Affairs and Housing continues to assess the impacts of Bill 23, but we've had no indication that there will be changes made to mitigate some of those impacts at this point. Thank you.
Okay. And my last question, again, I think you did give us the number, and I'm looking at slide 23, applied additional reserves and reserve funding finance. What was that figure again?
So through the chair, it's increased over 35% from last year. So we're at 321 million being pulled in this year.
Yeah, that's what I had written down. That's what I heard. That's a big number. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. I don't have any further requests for questions, so I'd like to move through the agenda. Under 9.2, we have all the correspondence, and what I'd like to do is move A through H to consideration of the budget. Do I have a mover? Counselor Lee, second by Mayor Schumer. Debate. Being none, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried. All right, let's go to 9.3. Folks, we'll start going through the budgets, and then we'll take a short break. Lunch is available, and then we'll move to the budget consideration directly after a short break. So 9.3 is, I'll go through it, and if you have questions, please let me know, and then we will answer questions as we go through the business plans and budgets. First one, A, is conservation authorities. Councillor Lee.
I guess my question is, and I want to preface this with, obviously I'm in full support of our conservation authorities, but a lot of their powers, so to speak, were stripped, have been or were stripped by the province. What is the long-term plan for conservation authorities as far as we know? Do we see like they are here to stay and like just to guide us and give suggestions, or do we kind of foresee them being kind of phased out based on provincial guidelines?
So if I may, through the chair, a major report came to council in January with respect to the MOUs for conservation authorities, and the work there was led through planning in conjunction with Nicole. So perhaps if Brian may have some comment, or Colleen with respect to conservation authorities.
Commissioner Bridgman.
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Chair. I don't think it would be accurate to say that, we can foresee the disappearing of conservation authorities. You're right that their role with regard to commenting in matters of natural heritage has been diminished, but as far as natural hazards, floodplains, that sort of thing, that continues, and they'll be continuing that work.
Do we foresee, because, I sat on Cloaca last term, and part of the erosion of the coastline is causing houses to possibly fall, right? Like collapse. And we're seeing that more and more across all kind of coastline housing. Are we prepared for that eventuality to happen? Like, is it ultimately up to the house owner to take care of that? Or is there some responsibility for the region to look out for that as well? Or the Conservation Authority?
Commissioner?
Thank you. Well, that is definitely a main line of business that the conservation authorities would be working on, looking at those coastal areas as well as the rivers, of course. I think in answer to the question, if I was a homeowner in one of those situations, I would be in contact with the conservation authority, getting their best advice and taking whatever measures I could and trying to inform myself best I could. But I think there'd be some mutual responsibility, if you will, in terms of how to handle whatever eventuality may be in the horizon.
Then are they funded enough to deal with those eventualities? It's generally my final question. Like, if we have a cyber attack, we are obviously on the line for millions of dollars, right? But we're hoping it doesn't happen because we put safeguards in place. Same as now, like, I'm not sure, I'm kind of asking, are the safeguards in place so when these houses inevitably fall, are we in a prepared state to manage that?
Well, not to be flippant or anything, but I don't know that anybody would see themselves as being adequately funded, in particular the conservation authorities. I think there's probably a lot more that they feel they need and could use to, make places feel safer in those flood risk areas.
Okay, appreciate the answers. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. There's no further questions on conservation authorities. Going to move to the Durham Regional Police Services. Ms. Fetter from Director of Business, I forget what her title is, from the police is online if there's questions in regards to that. No questions on police? All right, we'll move on. Questions to transit. Mayor Schumer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, through you, and I didn't have any questions on transit, as you know, on the executive committee until today, and one of our deputations mentioned a 10-minute frequency, and this is, you know, obviously a question out of left field, and I know there might be a delay in getting the answer, but what would it do to the budget to meet that request for a 10-minute frequency?
It's infinity.
Yeah, and I'm not talking on demand, by the way.
So
Fair enough.
did you get the dartboard that quickly?
We did.
Oh,
We're
good. Okay, thank you.
We're good. Through the chair. And the reference to the study that was done by the Toronto Board of Trade, and again, it is about enhancing public transit service levels to ensure effective mobility. And again, frequency, reliability is a key determinant on ridership and public transit use. As part of our 10-year strategy through 2032, the plan is that the majority of our existing pulse routes, so the 900, 950, 960, 901, they will be approaching very close to that 10-minute frequency. So those core, the core backbone of the network, those frequent routes will be approaching that level. Local services will not be at that point yet. If we were to consider moving all routes to 10-minute frequency, I would not recommend that because from a ridership perspective, it would not be a good use of our resources. But the 10-year plan does take into account that for those most frequent routes that we have in the network. We would have to, again, look at other areas as ridership increases, as other routes may come online. It may add additional pressures, but at this point in time, we do have that component covered through the 10-year strategy.
Okay, thank you. I think that's a great piece of information, perhaps for the many people watching, or at some point we'll read the minutes of this meeting, that it would take the equivalent of that 10-year increase in funding, essentially, to get where they want to be. And I don't think, I don't think anybody living anywhere in the region would think that that's a prudent thing to do, affordability-wise, to bring that all into 1 year. So they've got to understand the unique pressures. Thank you.
Thank you. If there's no other questions from committee, Councillor Kerr, question on transit.
Thank you, Chair, and through you to Mr. Holmes. Mr. Holmes, what's the current status of hydrogen buses? When might they be a viable alternative to electric? And let's just start with that question.
Thank you. And through the chair, as you may know, hydrogen buses actually were used in the 2010 Olympics at Vancouver. So the technology's there. The issue that we have is the supply of the fuel and a reliable fuel source. So as I know there's various pilots being undertaken, I was speaking with my friend beside me, Andrew. Again, we're both very interested in hydrogen as a solution for our power of various fleets, including transit. So right now the issue is not the bus technology, it is the reliable supply of the fuel that will really drive when hydrogen becomes a reality that we could be able to rely on. Always interested, we continue to look at pilots and we keep our eyes on that across the industry as fuel supply does become available to us.
Thank you. What is the potential of creating a little more of a grid pattern transit system than loops and routes that we have now? And I guess I'm thinking more east-west, Bloor Street, Roslyn, Highway 2. I know we have the BRT project coming forward. What's the potential of creating those as alternative drivers to perhaps Highway 2, and what would the benefits be?
Through the chair, our planning group have taken great strides over the past 8 years at removing most of those circuitous routes and loops in the community so that we are much more of a north, south, east, west grid network today. We still have some legacy areas where we need to address, And that really would take more resources, more capacity. In terms of Highway 2, it is our most frequently used east-west corridor. And part of that deals with frequency, as we mentioned before. We do have the 916 on Roslyn that goes across the region, the 915 on Taunton that goes across the region. They're at 20-minute frequency now, but as we invest more in the service and we increase the frequency, we're expecting ridership there to grow. We have been introducing service south of the 401 as well, along Bloor Street in areas. And I realize it's not a fully connected area, but it does travel. There's a large section of industrial area where ridership levels have historically not transpired. So it is a bit separated, but again, to connect both sides would take additional resources, both staff and vehicles. But again, our objective is to move towards the grid network. We're almost there, but we still have some more revisions that we need to make. But we're really happy with the progress we've made so far.
Thank you. And through you, Mr. Chair, my last question. My ward in Oshawa involves the downtown and up to Roslyn Road and down to Gibb Street. So I hear the discussion from students about the difficulties traveling up Simcoe Street and back because of the volume. So my question to you is, in the next few years, we will have a GO station at Thornton Woods as well as First Avenue. And I'm wondering at the veracity of having a system of buses going to the North Campus that would run up Thornton Road and Ritson and in north to the campus, and then those two buses come down Simcoe, and then the Simcoe buses coming up Simcoe and then splitting off and going down Ritson and Thornton. And the reason why I ask this is because it seems like all the students in the region are brought into Simcoe Street and then funneled right up Simcoe Street. And it seems to me that that's part of the capacity. So I'm wondering if we couldn't look to the future and see about a way that we could divert students and other riders coming east and coming west before they get to the downtown, so that we would dilute, if you want to put it that way, the number having to go up Simcoe to the campus and bring them in through two other alternate routes, cycling the buses through. And I'm wondering, how feasible is that, and would that alleviate some of the pressure on Simcoe by diverting it over to the routes east and west of there and get those students to come to the campus that way rather than all coming to Simcoe Street? And what that would do to costs and service and all the rest of it.
Through the chair, and as we've recently gone through in January as an example, and as you've heard in various delegations that the ridership pressures are the highest they've ever been on the network, and it's not expected to change. Our approach today is that we design the network to be as efficient as possible and to maximize the use of all of our resources, which is what we have today. Our planning team are always looking at alternatives, and as additional resources come online, how can we adjust the network so that we are taking some of those pressures off? To the point you made, it does take more resources because it would be a less efficient use of the service that we have. There are some corridors that are not great from a transit perspective with graveyards and airports and things don't typically generate a whole lot of ridership and residents on one side of the road. So they're always evaluating those issues. And again, we will continue to look at that as more resources come online. And we're really looking forward to that opportunity when we have that capacity that we can then perhaps look at breaking some things up, but it will come at a cost in terms of being less efficient than we would be today.
Okay, and not wanting to dive into the weeds too much on this. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think I've made some points and given some points for consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. No other questions on transit. We're going to move to health, public health. Oh, sorry. Councillor McDougall.
I just had a question in terms of airports as a transit driver, because I'm pretty sure that Toronto built a train to the airport as a potential transit driver. So perhaps you could reconsider that in the future.
Thank you.
I
Councillor
just
Swing.
I just wanted to mention, yeah, attaboy. Good boy. I just wanted to mention,
Attaboy and good boy are two completely different things.
he
so.
gets two.
Okay, good.
He gets two.
Don't say atta girl.
I
Yeah,
did not.
don't you dare. I just wanted to say how efficient our GM is at running our meetings, that we don't even get snacks anymore because they're too much and they're out of our budget range. So I just wanted to say how efficient our GM is with our transit committee.
Okay, thank you. Moving on, health. Questions on public health. Questions on paramedic services. Being none, moving on to social services. The first one is emergency management and program support. Next one is social assistance. Children's services. Family services. Housing. Long-term care. I have one question on long-term care. At the announcement on Friday where Chair Henry was there and Minister Cho in regards to the new facility in Pickering, we talked about operating costs of 24 million. Is that the number I heard correctly?
Through the chair, you did hear between 22 to 24 million. Don't forget there's debt coverage that needs to be picked up in there.
Doing the math that my friend Councillor McDougall did for housing, we do the math for 200 beds. Is that the ratio we typically look at other facilities? Is there a difference between a 200-bed facility, a 300-bed facility, and a 400-bed facility? What are the efficiencies? What's the best size?
So if I may, through the chair, we did a lot of that work and provided it in the Seaton report, but I have no option but to refer that to social services. I'm not sure if they may need to come back to you on that.
Okay. Stella?
Yes, through the chair, it is in that similar range, a little bit less because of the debt financing.
Thank you. No other questions on social services? We'll move on to planning. First one's planning. Councillor Lee.
Thank you, Chair. My first question is, has the province approved our regional official plan yet?
The answer is no.
So there's a few line items regarding the official plan and, like, I'm assuming execution of the official plan. Would anything be in flux based on any changes the province makes, either approves it or doesn't approve our official plan?
Commissioner?
I
Sorry,
may need,
Commissioner, that Commissioner.
yes, thank you. I may need you to sort of ask the question again, but if I understand it correctly, of course, things proceed as they are based on the current approved official plan, and life continues. But in terms of being in flux with other provincial initiatives like a new PPS or changes to the growth plan, et cetera.
Well, what if they reject our official, because they've rejected other regional official plans, didn't they? Or am I reading that wrong?
Yes, they've approved 12 other official plans. They took them back, those approvals, and then are in the process of reapproving them, if you will. Ours has never been approved for the first time.
Right.
So as of today, it's been 10 months and 2 days that it's been sitting there. I know that it's still under review by staff, and we are continuing to operate as best we can.
If they don't approve it, and that's a possibility based on other regions, would there be an added cost based on extra staff time, extra work required to make it approvable?
I don't see that as a possibility, that they won't approve it on some basis at some point in time. But if they didn't, and then that would be tremendously inconvenient in so many respects, for the work that our Works Department does in terms of water, sewer, long-term planning, in terms of the work that we're trying to do around major transit station areas, because you can't pass a bylaw that doesn't conform to the official plan.
Right.
So it's holding up a lot of things, and you'll know in Ajax how much it's holding up some of the residential work that you want to see happen. I know that lots of calls have been made to the province to ask them, including my own and others, the CAO, for example. So they're well aware of our desire to see it approved as soon as possible. But we don't have any intelligence in terms of a clear by when, other than the odd rumor here and there.
Okay, I appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor, Chair Henry and I had an opportunity to speak with the Premier in Pickering on Wednesday, and he indicated that it would be very soon. I think he might have used within days, but I don't want to. Right, and we are meeting. The mayors are meeting with Minister Calandra in Whitby on Friday of this week. So it wouldn't surprise me if something happens at a very short period in the future. Yes. Economic development and tourism. Councillor Lee.
Thank you, Chair. One of the efficiencies we found was less trade shows or a reduced presence in trade shows. One of them was Collision, was mentioned specifically. What do we foresee as the impact of that to our economic development plan?
I know that Simon Gill is on the line, but I'll start and see if what I'm about to say satisfies. But as far as impact, I know from talking to Simon that the objectives achieved from the first 2 years of going to Collision have really been very measurable, very positive. And it's for that reason that it's not seen as terribly critical that we're not going to be going this year. And in fact, some planning for a future year for another also similarly big tech type of conference is where the efforts are being put in for the coming future. But I think the results from the last 2 years from Collision have been seen as very positive.
So is it a matter of we can actually reformat our strategy a bit and go every 2 years, every 3 years, and make it more impactful those times? Is that kind of our adjusted strategy?
I would say so. Always looking for opportunities and the best opportunities to showcase the region as best we can.
Great. Could I hear from Simon as well, if you don't mind, Chair?
Simon, are you on?
We got Simon on. Simon?
Yes. Yes. Hi, Chair and Councillor. I think the commissioners captured it accurately. We are always looking for the best and best value opportunities to showcase the region's value proposition for new investment to the right key audiences. So we're looking at other opportunities that we think will deliver great value.
Staying along the technology framework, we're top 7 according to one of the intelligence fields or whatnot. Have we ever thought of hosting our own tech conference, seeing how we're making such inroads on nuclear and other inroads?
Yes, through the chair, we do look at a number of different opportunities to host events in the region, obviously sporting events, but on the investment attraction side, as you mentioned, we're currently scoping out possibilities for hosting an energy-related event in the region, possibly collaboration with other events that are being planned in the future. This would be an out year, potentially 2025 or 26 thing. But yeah, certainly we're looking at opportunities to bring those great business audiences into Durham region to show off what we have to offer.
Perfect. Thank you very much for the answer, and thank you, Chair.
Councillor Wu.
Yeah, thank you. And through the chair to either the commissioner or Simon, would you say the success of economic development is how we look at our tax base? And I think over the course of time, we've seen industrial property tax share has declined. And like I say, would you use that as a measurement to see your success in building that commercial industrial tax base?
Simon says.
And perhaps may I
Chair.
perhaps help Simon out, if you will. using the property tax assessment base as comparison is very, very challenging because you're basing it on MPAC valuations. So you end up getting caught up in the difference between growth versus assessment value changes. And because that changes the base of comparisons, it makes it very, very hard to use that as a measure. I mean, we did note in the report that 2024 return roll is a bit of a good news story from the non-res, but I wouldn't want to tie Simon to delivering based on an assessment roll that changes for reasons other than his work. But again, Simon, if you may want to add there, but that's kind of my struggle from a finance perspective when you look at the assessments.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner. I'll just add that in our new economic development strategy, Ready, Set, Future, we have a focus on the residents of Durham as our prime audience for measuring success. And in fact, the way that we're going to try and measure our success over the 5-year term of that strategy is average growth in median household income of our residents. So if we can increase the household incomes of our residents at a high rate, then we will be hopefully achieving many of the objectives in our strategy.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Moving on to Rapid Transit and Transit-Oriented Development Office, part of planning. No questions. Okay, folks, what I'm going to do now is ask for a recess till 12:15, and then we'll complete the budgets and then go into the budget itself and invite you to get some nourishment. And let's keep this 20 minutes to 25 minutes. Moved by Councillor McDougall, second by Councillor Lee. Carried. We're in recess. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to call the meeting back to order. Madam Clerk, can you do a roll call, please? Electronic roll call. Thank you, Councillor Leahy's absent. We're moving through our business case, G Works, business plan and budget works, general tax. Questions? Being none, solid waste management. Being none, we move through to Finance and Administration, Regional Chair's Office. Amendment to delete. Sorry, that was Regional Council. Office of the Regional Chair. That was the delete motion that Councillor Lee was considering. Yeah. Office of the CAO. I see none. I'll move on. Legal services. Corporate services. 911. Finance. Corporate. Regional headquarters. Do you want a question? Chair Henry?
A question. This building opened in 2006. Is the debenture paid yet?
Mostly there is a last piece that's phasing out in the next year or so, so it's almost done.
So what is our annual contribution to the debenture? Do we know?
Nicole's going to take a look and pull that out for us. The other thing, we typically have a strategy, knowing if we have more debt coming on stream, that we move the tax levy funding from one debt to another, so that we try to mitigate those tax increases.
Nancy, do you want me to continue, or?
Sure, if that's okay, we'll come back.
We'll come back to that one. Durham Region Local Housing Corp. Durham One Net. We have an answer?
Through the chair, 2.9 million is still in debt repayments.
So the work that's going on to modernize this building, will that money be used to offset those costs?
Through the chair, a lot of the work being done on this building is being done through reserves and reserve funds in order to prevent, and we've talked about this quite a bit, not having to build another facility which would cost far and away more. So a lot of that's being funded through reserves and reserve funds.
Okay, that answers that. Durham 1, there was no questions. Listing of fees and charges. Questions? Councillor Lee.
Thank you, Chair. I'm assuming the answer to this is yes, but the majority of our fees are charged to, I assume, Durham residents, correct?
Through the chair, certainly the consumption-related type of charges where somebody wants a service and they pay for that, but we do have a couple of other scenarios. So one example is our lab for the Durham, our water testing lab that's at the YDSS. We respond to RFPs. For example, a recent one we've responded to is the Ontario Parks water testing. So we do have customers, if you will, of some of our specialty services that are beyond the borders of Durham. But generally speaking, our fees are for that frontline service, that somebody, a consumption-based fee.
So for the consumption-based fees, is there a percentage of non-residents, and do you know what that percentage is that utilize those services?
Through the chair, not off the top. I mean,
Sure.
A lot of our fees are transit and water sewer fees that you see in there, development charges, those kinds of things. So I couldn't really say off the top. I think probably it's a fairly small amount of revenue stream that comes from beyond our borders. And when it is, it's helpful because it subsidizes, if you will, our costs of providing
Well, I
these
guess
services.
my question ultimately would be, is there not an opportunity to charge more to non-residents? So I know a lot of local area municipalities do that. It's apples to oranges in the sense of like swimming fees versus, sewer use bylaw fees or consolidation fees. But I don't know, is there an opportunity to charge non-Durham residents a bit more to create a bit more revenue?
So through the chair, most of our fees, you actually have to live here, right? So things like water, sewer, development charges, transit. So it's not, as you say, it's not quite a comparison because at the local level for a recreational facility, you can identify those out of boundary people. The other thing that we have is mandatory legislation. And so I'll use our long-term care homes as an example. We're not allowed to say, non-residents of Durham are in a different class. So when you start to whittle it down, it really does come down to things like bidding on clients for our water testing results.
Are police fees also provincially mandated?
Through the chair, the police fees are set by the police board, so we did pick up the changes here. They tend to represent things like off-duty officers, I call them that, but they're uniformed paid duty officers.
I guess something like an FOI fee, right? Coming here, making our staff do the work versus going somewhere more local, are we able to charge non-residents a higher fee? And I'm not saying by like double or anything, but even just like 10, 15, 25%.
We can certainly take a look. Things like FOI, we'd give them generally a quote. If it's not just a photocopy, we give them a quote on the amount of hours and resources it would take, and then they have to, so it's more of a cost recovery, if you will. But we can certainly take a look at what's there and see whether there's any opportunities. I think it's limited, but we can certainly take a look.
And I get that too, and
list
I
see.
appreciate that. I
Yep.
just think right now we are in a position where every cent counts, as we've said many, many times, and I'm just trying to find any sort of additional revenue that we can possibly generate.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
appreciate you looking at that. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks so much. That concludes this part of the agenda. We move to reports on 9.4. Page 39 of the report, has strategic property tax study, and it has recommendations both A and B in a lengthy report. Perhaps I'll get a mover and a seconder and then have the commissioner speak to it. Moved by Councillor Wu, second by Councillor McDougall. Commissioner, you want to speak to this report? It is about 25 pages. It's interesting reading for sure, but please go.
And perhaps that's where I'll leave it. We did have one slide in the presentation pertaining to it. There's lots of great comparative data. So if you have taxpayers asking questions over how we match up, there is some great information in there and a link to a more fulsome attachment last year. So there's some great data from a constituent perspective if you're being asked questions. But the report itself, the recommendations are fairly straightforward.
Questions, debate? Councillor Wu.
Yeah, through the chair, and thank you, Commissioner, for this report and the following report and the work that everybody's put into it. I spoke about this last year, and it's propped up again. The two municipalities that have nuclear power plants and the stranded debt, and I think we're trying to find out if that stranded debt is paid off to, what's the acronym, the Ontario Electric Commission or whatever. But,
Ontario Energy Board.
Yeah. Have you been able to find out if that stranded debt has been paid off?
So through the chair, we have not made any movement on this since last year, and it is, of course, of key importance to particularly the two locals and the region that have the nuclear presence. We will continue to work our way through, and I know that we do have an active work on the Durham nuclear side of things through the CAO's office and advocacy. So we'll certainly keep working towards that.
Right. One thing that, again, dealing with and again, it was the Ontario Electricity Financial Corp. I guess that's the acronym I was looking for. Now, it speaks to, in the report 12.14, payable to a private corporation. Is the Bruce Nuclear considered private?
Through the chair, I'm just going to jump to 12.14 to make sure that I'm having the exact correct reference here. So I think there is always a challenge with respect to public-private partnerships. But that being said, I think the key here is that they are a designated nuclear facility under the Electricity Act. So I don't necessarily think that it is an issue of concern with respect to that, because they're not really treated like a private corporation under legislation for these property tax purposes.
Okay. Okay, yeah, and then you clarify that, because again, I didn't know if one was being treated differently than the other, with OPG being, I guess you want to say provincial, and the Bruce, I guess, public-private partnership, I guess.
So through the chair, from a finance perspective, they are the same. And anecdotally, when we were appealing all of these properties many years ago with a different hat that I wore, I actually hosted the Kincardine Treasurer because they couldn't afford the budget to stay in Toronto for the length of time of those discussions. So they were part and parcel, exactly the same treatment as we were working our way through this process.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Lee.
My question is thank you, Chair, in regards to the non-residential versus residential share of regional property taxes. So there's a comment in there, there's a point in there that says postponement of the 2020 reassessment results in relatively stable share of non-residential property taxes for the past 4 years. When the reassessment occurs, what do we imagine that shift will look like? Will it be 1090 or worse?
So through the chair, it's not so much the shift between res and non-res that worries me, although it could be something, dramatic. Historically, in the last number of years, it's not ended up to be that much. My worry is between taxpayers. So there are, any area that you've seen to be sort of as a hot or a popular area, residential homes have gone up quite a bit. Keep in mind, we don't get any extra revenue, and taxpayers have a challenge with this. So if their house is doubled in price, they think they're going to get a double the property tax bill. The theory is if everybody doubles in price, then nobody would see any shifts. So it really comes down to where you think you have changed in comparison to others around you. That's really the key, and that's where I worry about. And I'll use an example, perhaps if it's not offensive to anybody, downtown Oshawa. There's been questions over the years with, what they've struggled with. Why are their property taxes not seeing relief? Well, that's all about a reassessment that has to occur to determine whether the landlords that own those buildings, and their assessment is based on rental revenue streams, has there been a change there? And does that mean that there would be tax relief to them if they are valued at lower compared to others? So those are the dynamics that I'm concerned about more than just the sort of a big overall shift.
Okay, that's good context to give. Looking at the figure, for example, figure 3, it shows like 2011, all of a sudden there was a pretty dramatic spike over from 2008 to 2011 in non-residential, then a subsequent decrease in residential. Was that driven by market conditions? Was there anything that happened in that window that can be replicated, for example?
So through the chair, generally what you see, the peaks and valleys tend to tie into reassessments, because what we always see happen is particularly the non-res side is very difficult to assess. So they tend to go up in value in a reassessment, and then all of the appeals take place. And it takes a few years, sometimes even now, for some of those old appeals to be resolved. So that, I don't want to say that the role is unreliable, but in the specialty kinds of properties, the return role when it's a reassessment is really a shot in the dark until it's heard through a judicial process to cement that. And some of those non-res are very sophisticated with, full-time tax agents, that's what they spend their time doing. So that does cause dynamics when you look at the peaks and valleys that you see here, and it will cause a shift from one group to another. But then when reassessment really settles, you see that shift going back. I don't know if that answers your question.
It does. My last question should be a pretty obvious one. So right now we're pretty much at the highest delta between the two numbers. At what point, what can we do to change that, to change the direction of that? Is that something through economic development? Is that something through planning? Is it investment? Like what do we need to do from the governing body to change that?
So a couple of things. I mean, certainly economic development is a key priority here. As I mentioned, we can't really measure them this way because that would be unfair because of the other dynamics. But certainly that's a huge plus. Successes that they have has a huge plus to us and very advantageous. A concern that we're trying to figure out, and I referenced, is the economy shifting from land-based commercial and activity to online-based. And so that dynamic is shifting where our property taxes are coming from and has the potential. I'll use office as an example. There's lots of articles recently where office buildings are not, yes. So once that feeds its way into the assessment system, that will also cause reductions. So we are trying to look at some work with the universities on studying impacts of what that would look like. Sadly, it comes back to the residential taxpayer being the last person standing, and then it makes that even worse when we look at so it comes back to that municipal fiscal reliability. I was chatting during the break, and the other levels of government, their income naturally increases by volume. So if you're a sales tax and you have a good, even inflation gives you more sales tax. Right. But on a property tax side, you don't get any increased revenue from volume of activity. So, new homes, sure, but you don't just get naturally increased revenue streams without having to take action. So.
Okay, appreciate the detailed answer. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Schumer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, and thank you to yourself and Councillor Lee for that, because that was a good chunk of my question as well. But to follow up with it, it's been a number of years. And this is something that all municipalities are getting anxious about, because as you said, even though it's revenue neutral for the municipalities. It very much won't be probably for individual residents and homeowners. Surely with all of this going on, somebody out there, some think tank, some consultant somewhere is doing this work to try to get a handle on where this is going. Do you know of anything going on that somebody has at least tried to model out what's going on, because MPAC's not wanting to bring these assessments in, and probably for good reason? Is anybody trying to work out what this is probably going to look like?
So two things. So MPAC has been working on updated assessment numbers. They were ready to roll out a year or two ago. They are prohibited from disclosing anything to us under legislation. So they can't tell us, but they have all of that work done and are updated and ready to go. It's not them that's holding it off. The provincial government by legislation dictates. And I believe that if we're approaching a provincial election year, then it won't likely happen in the year of a provincial election either. So those also have a bearing into, because it does upset a lot of taxpayers.
Right. I get it that the government and MPAC are not disclosing this information, but surely there's somebody out there that has seen, hey, there's some value probably in us trying to model this out on what this is eventually going to look like, whether it's for, province-wide, whether it's for a given municipality, because it's this ticking time bomb, and the province is running scared, but surely somebody has enough information to kind of model this out on where this thing could be going.
So through the chair, the databases are just so massive. So there are probably some tax consulting firms that represent municipalities or, private industry and appeals that do a little bit of it, but there's nothing that out there, to my understanding, that would be reliable and that would be representative enough of our areas to have any bearing. So it really is a dearth of information until MPAC releases, and then all of us start modeling instantly. So as soon as we hear that, all of us will be all hands on deck trying to model implications.
Okay, thank you. But like you said, it's probably not going to now be until after the next provincial election. Thank you. I know you haven't got a crystal ball.
Thank you for those questions. There is a report, and it has been debated. It's duly moved and seconded. If there's no further debate, I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? That item is carried. We now move to the 2024 budget. The agenda speaks to links, but the actual document here and the recommendations go from A to NN. So can I have a motion to put it on the table? Moved by Councillor Wu, second by Chair Henry. That Finance and Administration Committee recommends to Regional Council the approval of this document from A to NN, and that item A, Department Operations, Roman numeral 1 be excluded from that, so that Councillor Wu and myself's conflict would be dealt with. Debate. Oh, sorry, I need a motion to divide then. Moved by Chair Henry, second by Councillor Lee, to divide the appropriate distinctions for the conflict for Councillor Wu and myself. All those in favor? Opposed? That item is carried. Debate on the main motion. Councillor Schumer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess I'll lead it off. I'm going to, it speaks again briefly in the report, and we heard it during the presentation as well, that the, or at least a portion of the 2023 surplus would be dedicated against eventually funding these shortfalls that we've had dumped on us. The surplus itself, and I know it's preliminary, I'm not holding you to a number. Do we have an idea where that's coming from? What's the driving force between the 19 to $20 million surplus?
So through the chair, there's two items, and I think I know where you're going, and I'm hoping that I will be able to satisfy your question. So the one item that we have seen a good year from is interest revenue. So in order to alleviate in 2024, we've done two things with that interest revenue in the 2024 budget. We have looked at it for purposes of the investment in transit to try to offset impacts there. And we have looked at it to offset debenture debt for the Seton. So in planning for that, hopefully continued increase in interest revenue for 2024. So that's the bigger piece. There is some pieces relating to closing out capital projects. That amount has been declining because, as you see from our accountability reports that come, more and more projects are not having a surplus in them when they're closing up, but there is some projects and some of that surplus relates to that.
Okay, thank you. I'm probably not going where you think I'm going.
My apologies.
Although, yeah, it's in the back of my mind. On page 18, and I know this is a relatively small amount, but it speaks to, I think it's on page 18, speaks to a $450,000 transfer to the climate, change mitigation. Just an idea, what exactly is that going to buy us? Like, what is?
So through the chair, the money came from savings on our hedging accounts for climate change, particularly with respect to grants and subsidies. We often don't know about them until the last minute, and then you don't have a lot of time to apply, and most of them are matching. So one of the benefits of having this reserve fund and topping it up again is that if FCM comes out with something, or if the province or feds come out with something, and there's often other agencies that have an interest in climate change that will come out with a program that, you've got 6 weeks or something to apply. What this allows for is the ability to maximize those grant returns by having the matching funding.
Okay. Yeah, I was just trying to see the real impact there. On pages 27 to 29, at least on those pages, it kind of focuses in on this whole issue of the DCs and what we're losing and how we're going to replenish it. Yeah, I've got a lot of concerns and questions here, but I do see that we're going to get a report or an analysis kind of outlining in detail, and I take it over a number of years, exactly how this will be financed. Do we have any idea when that report could come down?
So we included some of that content in the water sewer report in December, and we have some dialogue here. Essentially, we will come back before the 2025 budget because we'll have a few more things cemented, and we'll know if there is any hope of any adjustment to Bill 23. I'm told it would be by summer recess. If there's anything that's going to change, it's going to be now, or the opportunity is gone. So as soon as that is cemented one way or the other, what we're looking at is proposing that we need to have a dedicated levy increase for a 3 to 4 year window, because we can't spread it over 10, because if we open up our bylaw in, say, 4 or 5 years because of dramatic changes, well, then we start back at 80% again. So I have to get to net zero at some point before I start the next round of painful processes. So we're looking at that as, so we're kind of advising in here that that's what it looks like. We do not have a recommendation on the floor to have council endorse a 1.55 specific to Bill 23. We just want you to know that's the context, because in relation to everything else, we're going to struggle every year to try to find, as noted, we're now in the hole 56 million up to December 31st. Even a 0.5% is 4.2 million. So it's going to really start to tell on our capital projects delivery, which we don't have options about if we're going to help meet housing targets. So I don't know if the CIO wants to comment as well.
I won't comment on the numbers. I think Nancy summarized them well. I should point out to committee, however, that yesterday the chair and I, with our Director of Communications and Engagement, met with a number of MPP ministers down at Queen's Park, including the Minister of Finance. And in every meeting, we did raise the pressures being caused both in the immediate term and in the 10-year forecast related to changes in the DCs. So I can assure you they've been heard, and as I said earlier today, the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing is reviewing that. We are meeting with him on Friday. We're not sure when and if any changes will come, but certainly we're not alone in making the magnitude of the numbers known to all of the relevant MPPs.
Thank you very much for that. Can I ask what their reply was?
I think their reply was that they heard us.
Okay. Well, I don't know how many times you have to hear somebody.
So thank you. So part of the conversation was to bring to the attention of the province that this is a Durham issue now, but next year it becomes a region of Peel issue because their development charges are up. Then as it starts to affect each of the municipalities in Ontario, those municipalities will be doing exactly what we're doing, is advocating for some kind of reform. We've brought that to the attention of the minister yesterday to say, you know, this is Durham's issue today. January next year, it'll be Peel's issue and Durham's issue.
Yeah, thank you. Because, oh, sorry.
Sorry, I was just going to add the reason for that is, as Nancy's mentioned, and we did say this yesterday, we were first out the door in updating our development charge bylaw, so we were subject to the phase-in, although we tried very diligently to have that exemption. The other municipalities are already feeling the impact of what DCs can no longer fund. So, but the chair is absolutely right. Starting this year and next, they'll be experiencing that on an annual basis.
Thank you. And I think the province has heard municipalities for quite some time, and I don't know how many times you have to hear somebody yell fire before you do something. You maybe get out of the house. I'm having real difficulty deciding whether to support this, and I fully appreciate staff's work on this. This has been a nightmare job to do. It has been dragging on for many, many months. What I am concerned with is what I alluded to earlier. Well, I didn't allude to it. I came right out and said it. I'm very concerned about where this is going, not just this year, but down the road. By approving this, I feel I'm greenlighting that nightmare. And I don't know what that nightmare is. And I understand staff is still trying to figure it out themselves. I'm a little disappointed in the fact we're talking a lot of deferrals in here. We're talking, we'll phase this project in, we'll defer this one a little bit more. We're just kicking a can down the road. I did not envy staff when we told you, bring it down from 10, bring it down to 7, 7.5, because that's a lot of work. And my feeling was at the time something's going to have to give, but we really just got deferrals. And so it makes me really worry about next year and the year after that. And then coupled with this DC nightmare and the slide during the presentation of close to 300% increased in property tax funding for capital, it's just, I cannot at this point support this because of everything it stands for in the future. And I think as a committee and I think as a council, it is foreshadowing some ugly decisions that are going to have to be made. Whether the ugly decisions are very large property tax increases or the ugly decision is service adjustments. But I want to thank staff for all the work that went into this. I mean, we're looking at many hundreds of pages of hard work. So please don't take my comments the wrong way. Do not take my lack of support for the budget the wrong way. I support the process that everybody has gone through, but I can't support this because of where it is leading us. I could, come out with all kinds of possible amendments and everything, but at the end of the day, it's a much broader discussion, which I hope we have this year, because as you said, we're going to have to see where all this is leading, and I don't think any of us want to necessarily see it, and I know our residents don't want to experience it. But thank you very much.
Thank you, councillors. I think you make some excellent points, and I can understand your sensitivity to the issue. The $20 million surplus is bigger than your budget, so I get why you're asking these questions, and I think everyone around the table shares your concern about the future. That's why I could not support a deferral in the water rates, because at least it's in the base, and it's there for next year, and hopefully minimizes the need for added numbers. But we're talking about a budget now that's 2.2 billion with a B. We're talking about a 7.5% increase to taxpayers. That's real. There is an affordability crisis in our area, so we have to be mindful of that. It does represent a 2.1% assessment growth as well, so we're getting a benefit of new residents in our community. But it is a very difficult budget, and Mayor Schumer, you're quite right about the hard work that staff have done over many months. In fact, the commissioner was saying that she wakes up at night thinking budget. So it is indeed a difficult job and a difficult decision. I don't think we're all aware 7.5% for residents is it's a decision point between groceries and buying this or going on a holiday and all those kind of things. So it's real, and we have to be mindful of it. And we have to, I think, Councillor Schumer, you make a great observation about the future. What we're passing today is not sustainable for the next number of years. We got it from 10 to 7.5, but I wish it was lower. But the reality is we have so many pressures, and I have an opportunity to talk to the provincial government probably more often than most around here, and I do talk about Bill 23. In Pickering, it's $3.7 million last year, $2.5 million this year. Though we're a growth community, so those are real dollars that we didn't get because of Bill 23 on the development charges only. So they're small in comparison to these numbers. We're talking about $1 billion over the course of is it 10 years? 10 years, $1 billion that development fees are not going to be paid in this area. So that is real. So I have gone on here, but I think I'm mindful of 7.5 being a very difficult decision for some. I completely understand that. Further debate on the budget. Chair Henry, did you want to speak? You're on my green, that's all.
I'm not really sure you want me to speak. Mayor Schumer, I agree with what you have said. The challenge is after meeting and working with staff, and the nice part about the chair's job is I sit on every committee. I don't sit on the Police Services Board, but Councillor Wu will tell you that I'm in all the public portion of the Police Service Board meetings. And the challenges that we have with this budget wasn't created by the region of Durham. And that is the sad part about this budget, is when you look at this budget and you take out all of the issues that really are unrelated to what property tax should fund and see the shortages. So we received $4.5 million, I think, this week from the federal government for asylum seekers. $1 million short of the amount of money we spent. That is unfair. When you look at our numbers for homelessness, and I'm going from memory, so I apologize, but the number of calls since 2019 for our paramedics related to homelessness issues have doubled. Now, part of that can be weighed upon the decisions that are being made with the judicial system, and you hear the stories, and our police chief talks about that. Recidivism is a big part of the challenges that we're having with our police budget, and the chief has said to us, 18% of our police budget is taken up by the people that should be someplace else other than on our streets. And I've gone through this budget, all 991 pages, looking for items that we could remove. Now, I'm not sure there's anyone here in the room that wants a road project removed. You really can't touch water and sewer, because if you do, you are liable for the rules under the Wastewater Act. We've got people sleeping on the streets. We are doing more than most communities, and we're doing and setting an example that others would love to follow. But there again, homelessness is not really something that property taxes were ever set to fund. And those are the challenges we have, and I absolutely agree with you. But what happens if we don't do the road repair? We don't do the water treatment plant. We don't deal with the homelessness challenges on our street. We don't fund our paramedics and our healthcare system and our police department to meet the needs of our residents as well. You know, I would love to invoice the Minister of Justice at the federal level for the cost of recidivism. 18% of our police budget. So I agree with you, but what I will say is, and it does break my heart, that even when it comes to transit, paying carbon tax on fuel for your buses somehow goes against public transportation, because you'd want to lower the cost of fuel costs. So take the carbon tax off fuel, and we'd probably have what we need to make the difference up in our transit budget. There are a lot of things that need to be fixed, and that only way that's going to happen is when the leaders of the other levels of government sit around the kitchen tables and do what they did a long time ago, have that really deep discussion about where this country is going to be 10, 15, 20, 50 years from now, so that our grandchildren don't inherit the mess that we're inheriting right now. Those are my rant for today. If anyone wants to challenge me on my statement, I'm fine. And it's going to be a hard thing to support. But I'm not going to say that I'm not going to be able to fix a road or make a difference in the life of someone's child or family member that needs support that the other levels of government aren't providing. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I can tell you that when Chair Henry and I met with the Premier last week, we did talk about homelessness. And we did talk about our failed bail system. And the Premier, by and large, agreed with our observations on that. So further debate in regards to the motion? Sure. I'm going to call the first question, which is A. Yes. Well, Councillor Wu and I are going to be doing a conflict, noting conflict, and we'll do it through electronic vote, because it's a recorded vote. So we're going to move the first item, which is we're pulling item A1, the department operations, where Councillor Wu and myself have a conflict. So I'm going to call the question. Electronic vote. That item is carried. So the remainder of the budget of A through to NN is now before us. Is there any further debate? Being none, I'm going to call the question. Recorded vote. That item's carried. Thank you, folks. Thank you, staff, for the hard work. It's been many, many months, and we're not through yet. So, no items of advisory, no confidential matters unless we needed to go in closed session. But as indicated, we will get a briefing on cyber at some point in the future. Our next meeting is the 9th of December, sorry, the 9th of April. We just skip over the rest. Motion to adjourn would be in order. Moved by Counselor Wu, second by Counselor Lee. All those in favor? Opposed? That item is carried. We're adjourned.